There you go, that's better. All right. How's the sound? Is the sound okay? Thank you very much, my friend. And thanks so much for hopping on early. I appreciate it, you guys. Thank you so much. We'll be starting in a minute. Sorry, I'm just running maybe a minute or so behind, so I hope you can forgive me. And we'll... No worries. Just give me 1 second here. I hope everyone's doing well, by the way. And sorry for the momentary delay here. Just I know it's 6 o'clock now where I am, but just I'm running a little bit behind, so I hope you can forgive me. But in the meantime, while I'm just doing my final setup here, just wanted to let you know that today we are going to be doing we'll be doing the film, we'll be discussing the film Live and Let Die. So I will look forward to hearing your thoughts about this very interesting film. Very much so. So wonderful. Let's see, if I could ask, is the sound coming through okay from me? Is it okay? I have my mic on, but occasionally the sound can get a little bit patchy. So if anyone can just let me know that the sound is okay. Good, thank you. And okay, wonderful. So we're running a little bit behind, so let us just give me 1 more minute, and then we will begin. So thank you very much for your patience, and we'll begin momentarily. So just hold on for 1 second. All right. Okay. How's everything doing where you are in the world, by the way? Here, you just had a long bout of rain for a few days. It was raining quite heavily here in Tokyo, so it's been a little bit. We had, I think, a typhoon, but it didn't hit the country, so it went that way. So, but we still had the effects of the rain. So, I think it was okay. I mean, it's just rain, so it could have been a lot worse. But it's getting a little bit cooler here in Tokyo because we're getting closer to, well, we're now in autumn, and it was very hot. It was short sleeve weather hot up to about September, and then September, October was when it's, now we're in October obviously, now it's getting a little bit cooler, so that I think people are getting prone to maybe feeling under the weather. And so especially under the weather, what that means nowadays in 2020, I mean, of course, there's a lot going on with the health crisis in the world, but it's overall it's getting a lot more pleasant in terms of the weather, because as some of you may or may not know, I'm not sure, but summers in Tokyo can get very, very hot, and the heat can make it somewhat uncomfortable. So it's nice if it gets cooler. But okay, so I think we will begin right now. So anyway, greetings from Tokyo. Actually, okay, sorry, let me hold on, start that again, and we will begin right now. Okay. All right. Okay. So, greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I am so happy to see you. Thank you very much for joining. I apologize for the momentary delay in getting things started today. I hope you can forgive me. Today we'll be talking about this film, 1973's Live and Let Die, which is starring Roger Moore. And it is Roger Moore's first outing as James Bond, as you know, and so this is, I think, very significant in the context of James Bond films for many reasons, but I think primarily for that reason. And I say many reasons too, because it is also a film that I think is spectacular and great and has a lot of interesting aspects to it, alongside the aspect of the Roger Moore debut. So I'm looking forward to sharing with you some thoughts that I have about this going forward. And also from my vantage point, I'm looking forward even more to hearing your thoughts about this film, Live and Let Die. And if you want to talk about other James Bond films or anything, or if you want to have a chat with other people, the live chat is open right now. So thank you very much, and please feel free to say hello and to talk with me or to talk with other people here in the live chat. So anyway, so that is the plan for today. Now, a few things first, preliminary matters as with everything before we get started, which is, so the way this works is that I will be talking about Live and Let Die, obviously. And I'm talking about it obviously from a fan's perspective. I don't claim to know everything about this film, and I would never want to claim that because it's not true. I don't know everything. But I do approach this from a perspective of someone who has seen this film ever since I was a kid. And I've had I've had differing perspectives on it over time, and so I'll try to get into that as well. And I think that also plays a part in how I approach the film now. So I'm approaching this film as a fan who has watched it a number of times over many, many years, and who has had, I have felt over the years, especially when I was younger, it's ways about this film that are actually somewhat different than how I feel right now. So I'll try to get into that. But the point is that I am a fan. Now, that means, of course, that there will be questions that I won't be able to answer. There will be things that I won't necessarily address today. So this isn't meant to be any kind of comprehensive overview of the history of the film or anything. It's just a fun, or hopefully it'll be a fun time to just talk about the film and to share and to hear people's thoughts about it. So, in that regard, I look forward to engaging with all of you today. And this, of course, will be spoiler heavy. I will have to talk about specifics of the film as I usually do. I will certainly be talking about many things. The ending, of course, is definitely fair game here. So if you haven't seen the film, please, I strongly suggest that you turn off this live stream right now, and then you can watch the film, and then you can come back and you can watch this film, or watch the film. No, you can come back and watch this live stream as a video, because it'll be uploaded onto my YouTube channel, so you can watch it later at your own pace and schedule. So please, yeah, I will be talking about spoilers because I have to. So I hope you can understand that. And the live chat, I've mentioned the live chat, so the live chat is open. So today we have something a little bit different, but it won't, I don't think, it just a little bit different in terms of form, but nothing in terms of substance. And what I mean by that is we have two friends, our dear friends, Damn Fool Idealistic Crusader and Kubrick Lover 1972. And these two friends have very kindly agreed to serve as kind of moderators for the live chat, and so you'll notice that if their names come up, you can see a little, I don't know, icon or something like that. So they've very kindly agreed to be moderators today. So I'm very I'm very grateful for them, and so they will be helping me out where necessary. But I think in the total scheme of things, of course, the live chat is as it's always been, which is a place for you to essentially, if you want to ask me a question or make a comment directed to me with regard to Live and Let Die, I will of course try to address everything in the live chat. But please note also that I might miss someone, and if that's the case, then I apologize. That's not my intention. It's just I accidentally maybe just overlook something or forget to mention someone or something. So if I neglect to do so, I apologize in advance, but please, I ask for your understanding. And also, let's see. Oh yes, and so the other thing too is we've never had any issue in the live chat about anything like this. But as always, I'm always very confident and very reliant upon all of you, as you have always done, which is to just always show kind of mutual respect to everyone, even where opinions might differ. So, because the last thing we need is, and sort of unnecessary fights over something which is right, which is meant to be fun, which is a film. And so, so I always know that you will treat everyone here the same way that you have so very generously and very kindly treated me. And so I know that I can rely upon all of you for that. And as I say, I've been very fortunate. We've all been very fortunate. Nothing has come up. So, but if something does come up, but don't worry about it, and just either ignore it and just carry on with conversations, or do whatever you think is appropriate. But as I say, we've never had any issues in the live chat. So, because I always rely upon all of you and your great kindness and attention to detail and spirit of welcomeness that you always provide, as you always do with me. So thank you very much for that. And last but not least, of course, if you have any questions for me in the live chat about anything, please note that I do have to focus my energy today on Live and Let Die. So if you have any questions, for the most part, I will be only addressing any comments or questions directed to me directly. I will be only addressing the Live and Let Die related ones. And so if you have any non-Live and Let Die related comments, then I will be I'm very sorry, but I will probably just skip over those for now. And if you want to ask me anything non-Live and Let Die related, you can always leave a comment under a video or anything like that. Or I've been a little bit busy lately, but I'm usually trying to respond as best as I can to those. And so if you have any James Bond related questions you want to address to me, then please feel free to do so using the comment section of a video or something like that. So, okay, so with that, let us get into the proceedings here. So thank you very much. And I see that we have a lot of people here. Wow, that's wonderful. So thank you very much, everyone. Cyrother is here, our dear friend. Thank you. And all you lucky people is here. Hello, it's great to see you. Chris D, great. Oh, this is great. And Erwin is here, our dear friend Erwin. Sculder22 is here. Hello. Oh, Stealthbore. Wow, it's great. It's nice to catch you in a live stream, my dear friend. Wolfgrats, great. Mainly movies. Wow. Let's see. Chris D says, I always think of Lost in Translation whenever I hear someone say Roger Moore. Do you own a doghouse? Wow. Wow, my goodness. Thank you very much for my goodness. That's very kind. Wow. Wow. Tim, thank you very much, Tim. That's very, very kind. Wow. You're, oh gosh, thank you so much. Thank you. Wow, that's very kind of you, Tim. Thank you. Wow. It's been such a pleasure to be able to talk with you over the course of these past several videos and the like. So thank you so much. I look forward to our continuing conversations, my friend. Thank you. Space Cowboy, Mimi710, hello. And, oh gosh, this is wonderful. And Damn Fool, our dear friend Damn Fool, is already on the way to talking about the film with the George Martin score. So that's great. And Rod is here. It's from Scotland. So hello, Rod from Scotland. Hello. And Kevin is here. Hello. And Kevin says, I think this is Moore's best performance as Bond. He has a dark side to him in this film that carries over from Sean and George. Not too fond of the choice of clothes. Right. Sign of the times. Right. What did we say? What do we say to that, Kevin, and to all? Right. Don't forget the double vents. So yes, the clothes. That's a very interesting. Well, although actually the clothing, I think, is one of the really interesting aspects of this. And I think I'm not sure if you have any specific clothes examples in mind, Kevin. But I think one of the things that it is really interesting about the clothing is the way that Kananga and his crew, his group use clothing, especially in one of the early parts of the film, in order to play their roles, so to speak, with the fillet of soul and going to New York, and then of course New Orleans later, and I think actually that's a really key component to the whole plan that Kananga is trying to implement through his operations. And that's also a really interesting thing that I want to try to talk about. What exactly is Kananga's operation and how it actually works? Because I think it's actually really complicated. It's one of the more complicated operations that I've seen in a Bond film, because it's operating on many levels, I think, and I think on each where depending on what level you find yourself on, I think there's a slight possibility of deception on the part of Kananga and others. So, but anyway, and the clothes are a really key part of that, I think. So, Kevin, well done, and I will look forward to hearing your thoughts on that that stuff, that part of the film. So that's great. Let's see. And Michael M is here. Hello. And you say, I remember this being the first 007 title I bought on DVD, and it is still one of my favorite Bond films. Well said, Michael. Well said. And I will now use that great comment from Michael as an opportunity, a jumping off point to talk about Live and Let Die and just get into the intro. So as an opening remark, let me say too that Live and Let Die is a film that was released before I was born. I was born in '79. This was 1973. So I would never have been able to see this in the theater unless it was a repeat or it was a re-release of some sort. But I've never seen this in the theater, unfortunately. I've only seen it on TV when it was broadcast, or maybe on VHS tape, or later DVD, which is one of the great ones right here, and then later on the Blu-ray set, which is, who knows what will happen in the future in terms of future formatting and future releases, etc. But the point that I want to bring up here is that I too have seen this as part of, the thing that we all do, is watching all the Bond films we can that were made, especially for someone in my position who was born in 1979, watching the Bond films that were made before I was born. This is one of them. And this would always be the one that I actually had a lot of mixed feelings about it when I first approached it, when I was, however old I was. I can't even remember how old I was when I first saw this, or I can't even remember when I first saw this. So it must have been, I don't know, 6, 7, 8, something like that, maybe a little bit old. I'm not sure, but it was around that age. And then from then, I would just, of course, rewatch it, because that's what you do with a Bond film. You just watch it again and again and again and again. And then, but during those early years for me, when I first, and then into my teenage years, I would be, I said I had a mixed reaction to it, because mixed being, I'd be reacting so positively to aspects here. So the really, really positive aspects from my point of view, I'd be responding to. And then there would be this category, which would be the parts that I didn't understand. And there were a lot of things I didn't understand about this film watching it as a kid growing up. And I would say too, I would admit, there are things now that I watch about this film I don't quite get. And there are certain maybe turns of story that I think, oh, why is this happening, or like this, or what's going on here? And I'll try to get into examples of those in a moment. And why is this suddenly happening, and that sort of thing. So it felt to me like growing up that there were a lot of things that I thought were really cool, and then there were a lot of things like, what's going on? But I'll get to those in a second. So I had that general sense as one part of my reaction to the film. The second thing that we always have to remember, and I always have to remember, is that this is a film that comes in a very interesting period in the history of James Bond films, the Eon James Bond films, which is that, of course, this is during the period where the films were being produced by Albert Broccoli and Harry Saltzman. So Harry Saltzman is still in the picture. This is also in the early 70s, and so this is during the period of Bond films where we have the Bond films directed by Guy Hamilton and having the scripts or the stories being penned or being written by Tom Mankiewicz. And so, as you know, the pairing of Guy Hamilton and Tom Mankiewicz carried over 3 films during this period. That is not to say, of course, we've seen Guy Hamilton, excuse me, we've seen Guy Hamilton direct a James Bond film prior to this, which was Goldfinger, so we've seen that. But since then, some years passed, and then some films were made, and then after On Her Majesty's Secret Service, then we had a slightly different direction taken by the filmmakers, and that direction was essentially steered or captained. The ship was captained by, were steered by all the filmmakers, and of course under the direction of Guy Hamilton, and then the creative processes of working with Tom Mankiewicz over 3 films, which is Diamonds Are Forever, Live and Let Die, and The Man with the Golden Gun. And so this film is, I think, from my vantage point, I like to think of this film as being part of a kind of, I don't know if trilogy is the right word to use, but it is a triumvirate, if you will, of films under this creative banner, or under this period of James Bond film history. So I always like to think of it as the trilogy of that, the Guy Hamilton, Tom Mankiewicz trilogy, if you want to put it that way. And I think Damn Fool Idealistic Crusader Spencer, I think you and I have spoken about this, and I think you and I are probably in agreement about this, about approaching the films in this way. So with that, we have to think, okay, what are we getting when we are talking about the Guy Hamilton, Tom Mankiewicz trilogy, the early 70s films? We are getting a sense of style and sensibility, and ways that jokes are presented, and ways that action set pieces are presented. We are getting these in a way that I think can be said to be, on the one hand, somewhat similar to what we've seen in the past. You know, there's a villain, and there's a love interest, and there are some hench persons, and there's a plot of a mystery that Bond has to try to traverse and solve, and then there are action set pieces along the way, usually capped off by some kind of huge action set piece, and then some final follow-up at a denouement. And so that is the trajectory of these films in this era, and I think that is, in generally speaking, a roadmap for all of Bond films. Right, it's the James Bond formula. I think we come to know it. So in that sense, I think it's very similar. And we have, of course, the music and the theme song and the credits, and so all this part of the formula. On the other hand, we can obviously say, or we can say, or I think we can say, that these films, Live and Let Die included, during this period of the James Bond franchise, I think these films do have a marked tone that makes them so stand out from the rest of the pack. And I think there is a kind of way that they are linked to their time and place. This is the 1970s or early 1970s, and and there is a sense of, as you say, the fashion, I think, stands out very, very markedly so. I think there is of course, feel in the air, for lack of a better phrase, that I think is captured really well, really nicely. Right, Ted Moore, right, and then in terms of camera work and the way that little things too, like just how the air seems to feel when we watch these films on screen. It feels like it has a sort of 70s quality to it, for lack of a better phrase. And also the way that the jokes, I think, are pronounced. I think there are a lot more, well, maybe not a lot more, but I think the way that the jokes and the one-liners, especially when we get into the Roger Moore era. Well, actually, I should take that back, because there are a lot of them that were really good and effective in Diamonds Are Forever too. So let me rephrase that. I think that the way that the jokes and the one-liners and the double entendres and everything that we have come to know in Bond films up to now, I think that that quotient level is really increased to a certain degree in these films. That's not to say that they are comedy films. I don't think they are, but there is a great way in which that level of verbal humor and the dialogue, I think that there's a real interesting way that the dialogue seems to be on display here. And I would dare say too that it seems to me also that we could probably, maybe with some exceptions of course, I think we could probably say that I think in particular for the Guy Hamilton, Tom Mankiewicz trilogy, or the triumvirate of films, included in which is Live and Let Die, these films I think can be said to be really, really reliant on the dialogue and the script. And we know, of course, nowadays we have filmmakers, I'm talking outside of James Bond, we have filmmakers who are known for, writer-directors who are known for their witty or snappy dialogue, or to have films that have a real a clever way of using words and language. And I actually think that applies very much to this series, or this period of James Bond history. So I think that has to do a lot, of course, with the teamwork that we saw with the filmmakers, but in particular Guy Hamilton and Tom Mankiewicz. And so that's the general feeling that I approach Live and Let Die with. Excuse me, sorry about that. And so with that, The way that I feel about this film is that it feels to me like the dialogue it's very dialogue reliant, which I think is great. And it works only if the dialogue sparkles. And I think the dialogue in Live and Let Die really sparkles. But with all that, I think we do get a lot of radical departures from the James Bond formula that we have been used to, I think, prior to this period, and then with the films that come with The Spy Who Loved Me and beyond, at least in the Roger Moore era in terms of the John Glenn films. Well, of course, Spy and Moonraker weren't John Glenn, of course, but Lewis Gilbert, but the Lewis Gilbert John Glenn films. But the point is that this period is very different in my opinion. And it's different because, as I say, it's trying to capture a feel and time that is of a different era. It feels like a different era than the 60s that came before it, and then the latter 70s, and then the 80s that come after that. And it feels different in terms of the construction of the plots, because if you notice, there isn't necessarily a huge... Well, actually, let me take this back. The layers, I'm talking about, for example, the villain layers. There are villain layers in most of Bond films anyway. You know, the hideout where the villain is in order to carry out his or her own nefarious plot to do whatever, which is essentially the kind of MacGuffin, if you will, of the films. There will always be a kind of villain layer here. There is a villain layer in Diamonds Are Forever. There's one in Live and Let Die. There will be one in The Man with the Golden Gun. But it's a really interesting thing how the villain layers are treated, especially in Live and Let Die and The Man with the Golden Gun. And we'll get to that film later. But with Live and Let Die, it's really interesting how it's a huge layer that's carved out of the underground of this place in San Monique, right, which has this monorail that we're told that's going to be connected to I understand it's to the southern part of the U.S., I think, right? And that's how the drugs will be smuggled into the country without being detected by the authorities. And that's how that's the whole plan in terms of the drug network that Kananga seems to be planning and trying to implement, based in terms of the source being in San Monique and protected by the voodoo curse of Baron Samedi, right? That's the whole plan. But the layer in this film, it's interesting how it's used, because it's this huge carve out of a place, but you notice that it's not populated by a lot of people. There's like only 2 or 3 people there, I think. I don't know. And the same is true for The Man with the Golden Gun. There's only like one guy in this whole place, apart from Scaramanga and the rest. And so it's interesting how we have these layers that are really unpopulated when compared to, say, like Dr. No. We had this huge thing in Crab Key, or You Only Live Twice. My goodness, you had this whole thing, right? We'll talk about that later, and then we'll see later in Spy Who Loved Me and Moonraker. My goodness, this huge thing. So it's very interesting to see this almost turn that kind of plot element turned on its head, right? You'd expect a lot of people to be in this huge layer at the end, but no, it's only like a couple people and Kananga there with some drinks and stuff like that. So that's it. So that's an interesting little example. Another example is that we usually get a denouement in the Tom Mankiewicz, Guy Hamilton era, which is a final fight, if you will. It's an interesting thing. We have the build-up, which is a sort of a climactic action set piece that is usually at some kind of chase or something like that. But it usually involves the henchpersons. The main villain doesn't necessarily seem to be part of the action until a final confrontation with the main villain. But that is usually well, actually, let me take this back, because I would say that we'd always have, up to now, a kind of interesting link between the villain, the main villain, Bond fighting, and the final set piece. Let me put it that way. So in my view, it's always been like the final set piece has been all this action and all those people, and then in that, the main villain and Bond would be fighting. Okay, so with some exceptions, of course, with some exceptions, but it seems like this has always been the case. Well, you know, the exception of maybe being, now that I think about it, Goldfinger. That the fight between Bond and Goldfinger seems to be separated there, but for the most part, we always get some kind of huge battle, and then the villains and Bond seem to be fighting in that, in their own final confrontation. Here, in the Guy Hamilton, Tom Mankiewicz era, I think it's very clear how we have the villain fight and the villain fight with Bond and the climactic battle. They tend to be divided. They tend to be separated out. And to be specific, for example, if you think about Live and Let Die, we think about the boat chase in the bayou, and we think about how spectacular that is in many ways. And then, of course, the crocodile farm and the boat chase and the explosion and all that. That's a really prolonged, I think, really exciting chase. That could be said in many ways to be the big climax of the film, right? Because then after that we have the follow through with the infiltration of San Monique, and also the rescuing of Solitaire, and then the confrontation with Baron Samedi, and then later with, I guess, Whisper and Kananga underground. But to be perfectly honest, those set pieces, there's an explosion, of course, of the fields there, but excuse me. But for the most part, it seems like those fights are separated out. Right, so we have the climactic boat chase, which is its own part, and then we have the dealing with the villains, which seems to be its own part, and then on top of that, separate from it, we have another denouement, which is dealing with yet another villain, which is the tee-hee fight at the very end. And so there seems to be this way that the Tom Mankiewicz, Guy Hamilton era seems to be dealing with action and fights. Do they decide to have them combined all into one? No, they don't, right? Because they separate them out. And I actually think that's a really radical departure from the way that action set pieces are usually presented in Bond films. And it makes for, I think, a really interesting way to present action and to present information. Now, am I saying that is it different from, or is it worse than what we've seen before? No. I'm not saying it's either better or worse. I'm just saying it's a different, from my point of view, it's a different way of presenting action and the like. But the reason why I bring it up here is because it did affect how I saw these films, in particular Live and Let Die, growing up, because I always felt like the fact that the in my eyes anyway, the villain fights and the action set pieces were somewhat separated like this, in my eyes anyway, meant that, as I say, when I was a kid growing up looking at it, it felt like it was less spectacular. Let me put it that way. It had less of a spectacle than, say, a film like The Spy Who Loved Me or Moonraker, which is all spectacle, right? That's huge, epic stuff with all the stuff, right? So when compared with films like that, Live and Let Die, again, in my eyes, as a kid growing up, had less of a spectacle sheen to it, okay? And so with that, and then I think that in turn was the feeling that I had with the Tom Mankiewicz, Guy Hamilton trilogy of films as a whole. So it had less of a spectacle to it. That's how I felt growing up. And so when I was a kid, I would see that as being maybe somewhat of a weakness. Over time, I began to appreciate more how the construction really works in this era of films, and in particular with Live and Let Die. The construction of the set pieces and the action, I think, operates really well because I think it's very clearly presented. I think the way that the information is presented is really clear and sharp. It's delineated, it's organized, and I like that. And also, in an interesting way, it seems to be, I don't know, maybe this is a bit of a stretch, but as I was mentioning earlier, I see Kananga's operation to be so multi-layered and actually quite itself delineated, so that each layer seems to be quite separated from the other. And I think there are different distinct layers in Kananga's operation that makes it very sophisticated. We have the American operation, which is itself divided, I think, into areas, in particular New York or the Harlem area, and then New Orleans with the Philly of Soul chain. But then we also have the San Monique layer with the people and the protection of the field and the drugs, but by presenting the voodoo aspect of it. And I'm not sure if all the people that are involved there are complicit in Kananga's plot or not, or maybe they're being essentially fooled by Kananga and by Baron Samedi and others. I'm not sure, but that's another layer. But if we think that they're not being complicit, then we think that the layer above that would be maybe the hench person's layer, and then maybe Mr. Big layer. I don't know. Maybe that would be part of the American layer, level. I'm not sure. And then on the top, of course, we have Kananga and his inner circle. And maybe in between that, we can put Solitaire and her tarot card readings. But my point is that this structure is actually quite delineated and very, very organized. And so I actually like the fact that we have an organized structure of the villain's organization that maybe in some ways can be seen to be mirroring the organized structure of how the action and information are being presented in terms of the way that action and climax set pieces are being arranged. And so I like that notion of it. And also, there is something to be said about pacing in a film. And I love huge action set pieces. I really do. But there is also something really wonderful about watching a film that knows how to pace itself. And as I say, I'm not saying that the spectacular or spectacle films of the Bond films, like Spy or like You Only Live Twice or Thunderball, I'm not saying that those are not paced well. I think those are paced really well. But if we think about arrangement of information and action in another way, I think this era of films and Live and Let Die, I think paces things exceptionally well. And I only began to appreciate that as I was getting older. So that now I look at this film and I think this is really well paced. There's just enough information and just enough time to catch a breath. There's just enough of excitement here and just enough time to pull back a little bit, and then just enough, and then back. And I love that. And it becomes relentless, but it doesn't feel that way. It's an invisible type of relentlessness and breathlessness of pace, which I find therefore to be very clever. So that is it. I think in and of itself, one area where I think it's, as I say, different from the earlier films and the films that would come afterwards. But also, it feels like it is really doing its own thing, and I only began to appreciate that as I was getting older. And so that to me, therefore, is a general explanation as to how I approached it as a kid and my mixed reaction to it. But I look at the film now, and I will get to that later in this live stream. I look at the film now, and I think this is one of my favorites, and I'll try to explain why. But before I do, I think I have taken up too much time already, so I will go to the live chat, and I will see what people have to say. So. Yes, Cooper Glover 1972 is great. So let's see. Oh yes, so Cooper Glover 1972 says it has come across it's come across my mind, and it was mentioned by the screenwriter of the film Mankiewicz, having black antagonists, that maybe indirectly this might be a racist film, even though I like the film. Let's see. So yeah, I do want to talk about that because I do have a feeling about that, but I will talk about that hopefully later. But let's keep that let's keep that in mind as we go forward. But that's a very significant comment. I don't want to ignore that, but because I think it is very important to address. Let's see here. Let's see. Oh gosh, this is a great conversation everyone is having. Wonderful. Sorry, I'm just going through this here. I such a I'm such a terrible person when it comes to trying to figure out how the computer. I'm trying to scroll down and suddenly it suddenly I just jumped to the bottom here. So I'm really sorry about this. This is great. You guys are, wow. Everyone's having a wonderful conversation here. Wonderful. This is great. Goodness. Sorry about this. I am just. Oh, Jared's here. Thank you, Jared. Also, thank you very much. Jared also has very kindly been a moderator here, so thank you. Thank you. Sorry about that. Oh gosh, I'm so sorry about this. I've just pushed the button and suddenly I just scrolled down to the very bottom here. I'm so sorry. Okay, so just continuing on. Here we go. Michael M says, I always gathered this film was made in part to the blaxploitation genre. Well, actually, let's get into that right now. Sorry about that. I think let me just talk about that before I move on, because I'm going to forget. So, in regards to the way that we have African American characters, well, of course, not just American, right? Because we have San Monique as well, and so and other potential elements that might be being depicted throughout the proceedings of the film. So the mentionings of blaxploitation, I think, are very apropos, and I think also there is a certain sense and sensibility that's being captured here because of let's say, the way that the certain dialogue is being expressed, or certain aspects of mise en scène or lighting, or that sort of thing, the feel of the film, yes, the atmosphere of the film. And so I think that's a good way of looking at it. I always thought, however, and I've actually been thinking about this a lot, so I always thought about this issue, or the potential issue anyway, and I thought about it in terms of Kananga, the character of Kananga. And that is the key point for me, because, and this is an interesting gateway into talking about the villain, which is, I think, or the villains, which is one of the most fascinating aspects of this film for me, which is the character of Kananga, played by the great Yaphet Kotto. I think Yaphet Kotto is so awesome, and his performance here in Live and Let Die is one of, I think, the best in a Bond film, because he's doing a lot of things at once. I don't know if I never fully appreciated it until I got older, but he's doing so many things at once, and it's actually very, I think, it's really complicated what he's doing. He is, in my mind, Kananga is, in my mind, a character that is himself exploiting the community of San Monique, and also the African American communities that are found, especially in Harlem and in New Orleans. And in that sense, I always looked at Kananga and his operations, what he's trying to do, in the way that, right? Because his plan, Kananga's plan, is to exploit the fields in San Monique in order to make heroin, and then to distribute those drugs first free into the U.S. market, in order to create what does James Bond say, a kind of junkies welfare system, right? And then once the number of addicts has increased, then he will go ahead and sell heroin for profit, and thus corner the market, as what I say. So actually, I take that back. I'm not quite sure exactly what heroin will be used for purposes of this quote-unquote junkies welfare system, according to Roger Moore, in order to distributed free. And so I don't quite know where that comes from, because if you notice, Kananga says after the number of addicts has increased, then he will go ahead and sort of exploit that field that James Bond had infiltrated after he had tried to escape with Solitaire early in the film. So it's not clear to me exactly how much of how much acreage we have in terms of the fields that are used in the guarded areas of San Monique. But I guess the amounts we're talking about must be very, very high in quantity. But going back to Kananga's plan, Kananga is planning essentially to really do some very significant harm to many people in the United States. And he says it himself, he doesn't discriminate, man, woman, black or white, I don't discriminate. That's what he says. And so that suggests to me that he is not above really doing some very significant harm to basically anyone who is going to fall prey to this drug operation that he's planning. And so it's actually, if you think about it, it's a pretty sinister plan that he has, and that it's one that will potentially harm not just communities elsewhere that are not seen in the film, right? I mean, we don't see every place in the United States, of course, but it will potentially harm, because we know that his operations will be nationwide, because of, as long as he has a reach of Filet of Soul, right? And we also but that's the key. As James Bond is sort of thinking aloud and thinking aloud what Kananga's plans is, as he's chained there to the chair, we understand that he is going to be using the Filet of Soul restaurants as places of operation for distribution of the drugs. And so if we've only seen the two Filet of Soul stores or restaurants or bars, I suppose, in one in New Orleans and then one in New York. And so these are stores that are whose customers, the customers that frequent these establishments are the African American community, and I think it's almost entirely that. And so if we think about that, he's actually potentially going to be doing some really significant damage, Kananga is, to these communities, right? To the African American communities that are surrounding or that are otherwise going to be frequenting innocently the Filet of Soul restaurants. And so he's really himself a pretty dangerous person as a villain goes anyway. And so he's actually doing some significant harm to these communities. And so I think that in itself makes him, and him as the villain, I mean, he is, in terms of the black villains, right? They are villains. They are villains, right? So that, I think that's the key to looking at this film. And also we have to understand that the communities here with their structure, they are doing some pretty, not so nice things as well, right? We see, for example, the New Orleans a jazz funeral, and those people, and they're obviously complicit in murder, really, in killing of at least two people that we see, well, kind of see. Strutter, we assume he's been murdered in the same way. We don't actually see it, but we see the results of it. So which is a clever bit of filmmaking from Guy Hamilton, by the way. But so those people are complicit. The jazz funeral parade people are complicit. But and also the San Monique. Sort of ritual killing, right? They're also complicit in murder, and also attempted murder when we think about what they were trying to do with Solitaire at the end there. So we have these levels of people, of communities, that are also doing some pretty terrible things, right? And but are they themselves complicit in Kananga's own conspiracy? Or is there a conspiracy with him? Or are they being tricked by Kananga? We never quite know. But my sense is, for example, the San Monique community is being tricked by Baron Samedi, because they don't quite know that what, for example, when the Baron Samedi robot or whatever it is, the thing comes up from the ground there, they don't realize that it's actually just a little trick, and they're being tricked, and so they really believe that this is the voodoo curse of Baron Samedi, but in fact it's not. Well, let's see, we think it's not, and that's an interesting way that the film ends itself. But so they might be being tricked by Baron Samedi, and then by extension by Kananga. Okay. Then we have the New Orleans jazz funeral parade people. Are they complicit, or are they being tricked by Mr. Big / Kananga? And that's a real big possibility. And so if that possibility exists, then in my mind, I can think of, for example, these communities as being themselves tricked by the ultimate villain, who is Kananga, who is using all of the tricks. He's dressing himself up in the sort of the the Mr. Big garb, right? And he's going all the way to mask himself, give himself a different face, to dress up in a way that is, in a sense, using this outward appearance, this almost stereotypical appearance of a sort of a boss type of person that Mr. Big would be in this kind of story. You know what I mean? So it's almost like Kananga and his inner circle are really just using the outside or the outward appearances of, let's say, blaxploitation, of the really colorful, very stylish way to dress, and the fashion, in order to achieve this sense of a kind of for lack of a better phrase, a kind of sort of the use of these kinds of maybe visual cues based in sort of a certain cultural based visual cues, let me put it that way. And it seems like, therefore, Kananga is using this stuff, and he's using this stuff to his advantage, which is a really dastardly thing, because he's going to do some real, potentially irreparable harm to these communities that he is in fact using. So that's how I see it. And so if we look at it that way, then him being the villain, I think is what he is doing is also potentially very, very damaging. And so he has to be stopped, and his inner circle have to be stopped. And it's up to Bond and his allies to try to stop him. And that's the nature of the film. And so that's how I usually see it. And I understand that it could, of course, there could be potentially a lot of discomfort when it comes to these aspects of how, say, people might deem it, how people might describe it to be the treatment of race in this film. And so I completely understand that conversation, very much so. And I don't think it's an totally irrelevant topic to have. But I'm just saying that in terms of the plot and the story, I think the way I think about it, the more I think about it, the more I realize it's Kananga that's really doing a lot of the bad things here. And so he has to be stopped. And so that's how I see it. Now, is this to say that James Bond films are perfect in this regard, in terms of depictions of race or ethnicity? No, I don't think so. And but I don't think that we come to Bond films for that kind of discussion necessarily. I'm not saying that the Bond films themselves are egregious in terms of their quote unquote horrible depictions. That's not what I'm saying. But I don't want to talk too much about it, but I'm Japanese, and I love, for example, I love You Only Live Twice. I do. I think it's a great film. Now, do I think it's a perfect film in terms of depicting Japanese people? No, 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 no. No. My mom, when she was alive, my dad too, when he was alive, and when I was a little kid, we'd talk about it. We would just laugh at some of the things that were being depicted in You Only Live Twice. Who talks like this? No one in Japan talks like this. And like, and all right. So we get it, and a lot of, but at the same time, I don't have I'm not offended by You Only Live Twice. I think it's really off sometimes, but I just laugh at how off it is, and then I laugh about it. No, that's not so accurate, and I just move on, and I just enjoy the rest of the film because I really love that film, even with Sean Connery and his whole bit in terms of trying to be Japanese. My mom and I would just have jokes back and forth like, oh my goodness, you can't, this is the funniest thing we've ever seen. And it's, and is that racist? I don't know. Maybe it is. I'm not sure. But we just laugh and just move on. And then we understand that it's in the context of the film, and maybe it has to do with the time. I'm not sure. But we don't take it personally. I don't take it personally anyway. And so that's how I approach it. Now, of course, I think it depends on who you are, and maybe if you have a personal feeling, or maybe something that has of a stronger feeling than, say, I do. And I say I can only speak in terms of my own experience. I can't speak for everyone, but I can only say how I approach it. If you have a different feeling, I respect that completely. I really do, and I totally want to listen to that. But and maybe the You Only Live Twice example is not the same as the Live and Let Die example, and I completely acknowledge that as well. So I don't want to say that I think therefore all films in the Bond series are like how I feel about You Only Live Twice and Japanese depictions of Japanese people in that, and how I watch that film as a Japanese person. No, so I don't want to say that it's all the same, all things being equal. But what I do want to say is that there is this thing that we have to do, or at least I think I have to do when I watch a film, especially Bond films, whereas it has to be, I don't want to use, people oftentimes say that the use of the word context is inappropriate, but I don't think so. I think the word context here is in fact very appropriate, and I think we have to remember this. There is a certain context. Now, at the same time, that doesn't mean that we should excuse everything. That doesn't mean we should ignore everything, but we should really acknowledge it and see it for what it is, and understand that maybe some people might have a different reaction than others. My reaction is my own. It might be similar to yours. It might be completely different. Who knows? But in any event, going back to Live and Let Die, I do think that the key is the true villainy of Kananga. And if we think about that, we think about the potential for all the tricks that he's playing on the communities that he's involved with. Then I think we see that perhaps there is a lot more, quote unquote, maybe innocence on the part of the communities being depicted than meets the eye. And in that sense, I think it becomes a really nuanced and actually a very dense conversation about depictions of race, if you want to go in that direction. But just maybe saving that or tabling that conversation for another day, perhaps. I do think that while those issues might potentially arise, I do think also that ultimately we are dealing with the hero and the villain, and the hero-villain dynamic exists throughout not just James Bond films, but throughout many Western films of this nature. And so I think this dynamic works very, very well. And I think also another thing too that has been brought up in that conversation is the idea of, well, we have other characters like Strutter and the CIA, and also Sheriff Pepper, and how that seems to be turning the tables in another way. I think Sheriff Pepper is another character that is really one of the most actually complex and fascinating aspects of the Bond series. I think a lot of people, it's very controversial in terms of the fan reaction to Sheriff Pepper, but I think right? What is that great moment? Well, not great in terms of what's happening, because it's actually a horrible moment. But if you remember, there is the moment in the bayou, just as the boat chase is about to start, and Bond has escaped from the farm. If you remember, the henchman, the main henchman that's in charge of that, or leading the charge to chase Bond, I think his name is Adam, right? He has that sort of grayish coat, and he's the one that's leading. And he's able to steal the boat, the boat from Billy Bob and all that. So he's the main bad person, the bad guy in that little chase scene, right? So that's Adam. If you remember, do you remember what happens to him? He gets stopped by Sheriff Pepper in his car, and right, and he's speeding, right? Right. What does Sheriff Pepper say? I got me a regular Ben-Hur down here, and so, and he said, but he's treated in a way, right? He's stopped. He's out. And he's essentially being treated in a really terrible way. I'm talking about Adam, in a really terrible way by Sheriff Pepper, right? In terms of, hands on the hood, and it spits on his shoes, right? And so this is a very kind of racist attitude, incredibly racist attitude that's being depicted. There's a little bit of, I don't even know if there's any humor in this moment. It's actually a really kind of, I don't know, like a really striking moment, right? And if you think about it, this racist attitude, and it's interesting because it makes Adam a very almost sympathetic in that situation, and it sort of drives the place forward. And we look at Sheriff Pepper in that moment, and we see him as being almost vile. At least I do. And then he becomes kind of heroic, but he becomes the butt of a lot of jokes along the way. And I think that's the whole point that Tom Mankiewicz was talking about when he's quoted in that documentary about Live and Let Die, about how he wanted to create some characters, other characters to, in his words, make fun of. And I think what he meant by this phrase, make fun of, is the idea of seeing how these attitudes are sort of translated or played themselves out elsewhere. And so and Bond is not involved with that, right? And so we have this kind of racist attitudes toward this individual Adam. But at the same time, this racist attitude that's directed towards Adam is directed towards a character that is very clearly doing some pretty bad stuff, right? He wants to kill Bond. He wants to destroy him and stuff. So he has to be stopped, right? So does that mean that Bond, who wants to stop him and who eventually does that make Bond racist? I don't think that that parallel, there's not enough in the film for me to make that connection. So just because Sheriff Pepper does that to Adam doesn't mean that James Bond, who also has an antagonistic relationship with Adam, that doesn't mean that there's anything in the film that suggests to me that James Bond himself would have the similar attitude that Sheriff Pepper does. And so I think that's what Tom Mankiewicz was talking about when he's saying he needed other characters to make fun of in the context of this discussion of race. And I find, therefore, that is the key for me to try to make sense of this conversation in the context of the film Live and Let Die. Now, am I an expert in this conversation? No, I'm not. And so I don't declare any kind of moral or intellectual authority on this topic, but I have tried to think about it. And I think that is, a really helpful example for me as to how to try to keep track of it, right? It's the same thing too, right? There might be some, we never see any racist attitudes directed towards Kananga, at least I don't think so, but definitely towards Adam. But Adam is still a villain. And so we have racist attitudes directed against a villain, but he is still a villain. And so if he's still a villain, then as a villain, he needs to be stopped. And so that's how I see it, and I actually think that the film Live and Let Die presents it actually in a pretty interesting way. But I could be completely off on this, and so if you disagree, please let me know, and I'm very happy to hear out your voice of disagreement, and I will take no offense to that. But anyway, let's keep going here. I'm sorry I really monopolized the conversation here, but I will go back to the chat here. Let's see. Again, I'm skipping over a lot of comments from Wolfgratz and Stealthborn. I'm really sorry, and others. And do you own a doghouse? Tim has left, I think, but if you're still here, Tim, thank you very much, and I hope you're well. Let's see. And yeah, and Damn Fool, Idealist Crusader, and is actually referred to this earlier. And actually, Damn Fool, Idealist Crusader, Spencer makes a really good point about how the Ian Fleming novel is actually potentially much more problematic in terms of depictions of race. And I agree. That's a really, yeah. And so if we think about the way that the film script was adapted from the novel, and I use that term loosely because it's not really a full-on, they are really different stories, as you know. But yeah, it is, I think we also have to think about it, and as I say, I will use that word again, context. And so, and also if we think through, or at least I try to think through, the specific things that we see in the film, then I think that the conversation leads me to the place that I find myself, that I've tried to describe it. So anyway, so let's see. Yes, and Damn Fool Idealist Crusader makes a great point here, and he says, while the borrowing of trends is a bit more obvious in the 70s with Live and Let Die, they found a way to make it inherent to the story while making something like Fleming's plot work for 1973. Yes, I actually think that's a really good way of putting it, Spencer. And I think that's really great. You said it much better than I could. And so, and then, yeah, and then there's talk about Diana Ross. What were some of the ideas behind hopefully, possibly, maybe casting Diana Ross in the role of Solitaire? That's mentioned a little bit in the documentary Making of Live and Die, when Tom Mankiewicz was talking about what he was thinking in terms of the character of Solitaire. So my understanding was that it was a Tom Mankiewicz idea, I think. But let's see, just scrolling down. Oh, Kevin O'Connell says, the turtleneck and gun holster is iconic. You're talking about the clothing. That's great. But the light blue denim jacket and pants while he was fighting, infiltrating Kananga's base makes me laugh. Yeah. Yeah, there is something quite cool about his. I like this. You're referring to this, which is, I think, depicted on the cover here of this DVD. Yeah, I agree. That look is really cool. And it's actually a really iconic look in the holster and everything, and the revolver. I think it's really neat. Actually, incidentally, I should point out that this is a really great DVD, one of the classic DVD releases ever, in my opinion. And it's great, although we should point out the picture that they use here for Roger Moore. I don't think this is from Live and Let Die. I think this is from The Man with a Golden Gun, but okay, that's okay. But still, if I'm right about that, then still it's an overall great package. But anyway, let's see here. Okay. Erwin says, am I correct that this film is the first one in the series that uses a fictitious location? So you're referring to the use of the phrase, or not phrase, excuse me, that's very rude, the use of the name of the island of San Monique, right? So San Monique, that's yes, that's what you're referring to, because my understanding is that San Monique is not a real place, but it is a place of fiction. But let's see, just scrolling down here. This is a great conversation everyone is having, by the way. And it's going in a lot of great places, really great places, all the way to, I'm at the point where you're talking about Ross Kananga and the farm, right? So that's interesting. Right, Spencer, or anyone who knows, was the farm, the Roscananga farm, the real life farm, was that an alligator farm or was it a crocodile farm? Right, because in the film, right, it's crocodiles mostly. I mean, although there's an alligator, at least we know one. Maybe you can tell because of the nose shape, I think. Although I really can't tell, to be perfectly honest. But anyway, so let's see. And Erwin says, apparently there was a lion roaming around as well at the farm until crocodiles ate the lion. Yeah, that's referenced in the documentary. Yeah, that's a great moment in the documentary, right? Julius Harris, right, who plays Teehee. I love in the documentary, and he's talking about this thing about the lion. Actually, I've heard slight variations on this story. So I've heard about a lion, I've heard about dogs, I've heard about, but when Julius Harris is talking, who plays Teehee, he's on the documentary. He's talking about the lion and Ross Kananga's farm, and they said, and I love the and they got the lion. That was great. And the way the actor Julius Harris says that, it's just so precious, absolutely wonderful. And let's see. All You Lucky People says, Roger Moore's look on the cover of the DVD reminds me of Sean Bean as 006 Alex Trevelyan GoldenEye. That's an interesting point. And thank you very much, All You Lucky People, because that will bring me now to a discussion of one of the main components of this film, which is, of course, Roger Moore. Now, Roger Moore debuts here as James Bond 007. And my goodness, what a interesting debut it is. It is something that I think is so kind of fresh and new, and there are many aspects that perhaps might be said to be well, actually, let me take that back. I was going to say that maybe there might be things in this debut that might be changed or worked on later as Roger got into the role of 007. But actually, I think that he is so well established. He is incredibly established in this film as 007, such that I think that there's so much wholly consistent aspects to his character here that we see throughout his tenure, his run as Bond, that I think that makes this debut an incredible debut. Why do I say that? I mean, I love Sean Connery, and I'll be perfectly honest. I think those films are great. However, I do identify certain aspects of Sean Connery's debut as Bond that don't necessarily carry through in the later Connery films, such that I always see Dr. No sometimes, again, depending on my point of view, as being a film where maybe there are some aspects of the Bond character that were still being worked on. It was still a running draft. It was close to a final draft, but it was still a running draft. We never got a chance with Lazenby to see what that would entail. And of course, I think Dalton's run, I think there's some strong consistency between the two films. But in terms of a long run of films, there's of course Daniel Craig now and Pierce Brosnan before. But if we think about Moore and Connery, as much as I love Connery, I really think Moore's debut here is really so brilliant in terms of how consistent we would find it to be in terms of later things. Now, that's not to say that I think all of Roger Moore's Bond depictions are consistent. I actually think that his most inconsistent depiction of James Bond in his entire run is not actually Live and Let Die. It's actually, in fact, The Man with the Golden Gun. I actually think Roger Moore's performance in The Man with the Golden Gun is the least like the rest of his other performances that we see in the Roger Moore films. That's not to say that The Man with the Golden Gun performance is any bad, or any worse, excuse me, than the rest. But I'll talk about that later. But I do think it is different, and it is not consistent in many aspects. However, some people point to the fact that Roger Moore in the early films, before The Spy Who Loved Me, Roger Moore was still trying to feel his way through the character. Maybe he seems to be a bit more Connery-ish in terms of how he maybe treats women, how he uses threats in order to get what he wants, and how he tries to coerce people for information, that sort of thing. We see, as I say, we see a lot of this in The Man with the Golden Gun, a lot of it, in fact. We do see here, however, in Live and Let Die, to a certain degree anyway, a kind of way that he uses physical force. But for instance, when we think about his relationship with Rosie, Bond's relationship with Rosie, we see him, with the cigar and burning the hand as the hand comes through the door. And then there's that, but he didn't know who the person was. So I think we can discount that for now. I think the moment that people are referring to is where he puts the gun, or he pulls the gun and points it at her quite directly, right? And he says, I'll kill you if you don't, right? And he's very quite I don't know if maybe aggressive is the right word, but he's very threatening in that moment, in a very suave way that he's expressing it, mind you, that's for sure, but it's still very threatening, right? A gun pointed at you is incredibly threatening. So I think that maybe can be seen as an example, perhaps, of where he might be doing a Connery-ish type of turn. But he does have displays, Roger Moore does, in his run as James Bond. He does have displays of actual aggression and physical based aggression in a lot of places, and so I actually think that this display of a kind of threat, a menace, if you will, in order to essentially coerce Rosie into giving him the information about Kananga's location, the layout of the island. And so I think that is actually not inconsistent with other flashes of aggression that we've seen in Roger Moore in the past. Again, let's keep Man with the Golden Gun out of the equation for now, because I think that's an exception to the rule. But we've seen flashes of aggression in, for instance, Octopussy. He's very aggressive in some places with Maud Adams, but it's meant to be in that context. It's meant to be a kind of show of a kind of masculinity in the context of a relationship that is about to blossom, really, between a romantic one between Octopussy and James Bond. But there's an aggressive tone to his behavior there. There are certainly flashes of aggression and maybe even anger in the film For Your Eyes Only as well. That could be said to be quite brutal. And if we equate brutality with Connery, I don't think that's quite a good comparison, but just for the sake of discussion, if we equate the notion of brutality in James Bond with Connery's depiction, then I do think we do see flashes of that kind of Conneryism in the Roger Moore way, in the Roger Moore performance throughout his tenure. But it's done in a Roger Moore way. It's presented in a Roger Moore way, and so it's always to a kind of sort of a means of trying to be sort of conciliatory. Because even in this moment, when he's pointing the gun at Rosie, if you remember, when Rosie runs off after she's just scared to death in terms of the cursing, you can tell she is really terrified, and so it's a really terrible situation. And when the music's running, and we see that and Bond says, "Make your choice," and the music goes da da da, and we actually, my sympathies are wholly with Rosie, 100%, and therefore Bond is almost really being terrible, right? And so that is a kind of a flash of aggression and almost sort of a lack of sympathy, totally. Because our sympathies lie with Rosie. But when she runs off, he is, Rosie, and so there's a certain tone in the way that Roger delivers that, which suggests to me that there is a sense of him being a kind of, having a sense of the humane about him. And again, maybe I'm looking too much into the way that Roger Moore delivers those lines, Rosie, but still I can read enough in the delivery to suggest to me that there is still a sense of the humane, even when he's trying to get information. So I always look at that moment when he's got the gun pointed at Rosie, and then even later when he says, make your choice, which is ideally the coldest part of that moment. I still look at that as a kind of act that Roger Moore's James Bond is putting on in order to achieve his objective, which is to get information. And that moment is to find out where Kananga is, and to find out the secret of the layout of this island. And so that's how I can interpret that moment. And in that way of interpretation, and taking a step back and taking a look at the performance as a whole, I can see Roger Moore's performance to be so wholly consistent, and therefore it is so brilliant because of it. The kind of detail that he brings, I think, is great. There are little things too that I love. For example, I think he does action really well, and he looks so dashing and very handsome. I think he looks so fit, and he looks really great. I mean, he does have that wonderful Roger Moore run. You know, I love the Roger Moore run. It's quite a. He has this way of running, if you notice, where I don't know how to describe it, but he's running in a way where it seems like like Pierce Brosnan. You know how he's really pumping his fists, he's driving his fists in order to generate speed. I think that's really great. Roger Moore, I think he has the opposite way of running. It's almost like he's almost like it's like running in kind of a slow motion kind of way, or it's like he's, you know, it's like Olympic walking. You know, Olympic walking, when the whole rule of Olympic walking is you have to keep the sole of your feet on the ground. So I always think of Roger Moore as kind of like an Olympic walker, you know, whenever he's trying to run. And although I expressed just now that I think he looks really fit and very energetic in this film, and I think he does, when he's seen to be running, there's a bit where we can actually see him through the airplane window running towards the airplane when he's about to meet Mrs. Bell. In the airport runway area there. You can see him running a little bit. He's got that wonderful Roger Moore kind of Olympic walker type of run to him. And so I think that's a really charming thing. One of my favorite things, it's not in this film, but one of my favorite Roger Moore running moments is in fact in another film, For Your Eyes Only, when you actually see him, or you know, his James Bond character, like kind of running up some stairs, and so it's pretty interesting. Yeah, so this therein leads into a nice little thing about the kind of interesting character and physical attributes of the Roger Moore James Bond, and you've got the way that he uses he has a kind of wry look about him, that it's a great way of his way of winking at the audience without doing a breaking the fourth wall type of thing. And there's just an undercurrent of everything that he says as a double entendre, which I absolutely love. You know, one of the things I think it's quoted in the documentary, right? I'm sure we can lick you into shape. Sheer magnetism, darling, and the like. And so that everything that Roger Moore seems to say is taken as a double entendre, but it's never like, he never takes it to a level where it's seen as overtly dirty or kind of a lowbrow. And so I think that's very difficult to pull off, and I think Roger Moore does that really well, and he starts that so effortlessly and with such panache here in Live and Let Die. And as I say, he does action very well. I think if you see him, the way he maneuvers with the boat in particular, and how he encounters Adam and all the villains there and the henchmen, I think he does that really well. There is a way also where he shows a lot of panic, and he shows like I love the bit where the snake comes into the bathroom, and he does a little double take. So he does I love the Roger Moore double takes. He does like that, and he notices the snake, and you notice how he uses his eyes. When he does the second turn of his head, his eyes like bulge out. He's like, I love that too, and those quiet moments, and then it's capped off perfectly by the way he's able to fend off the snake and then do the little thing there with the aftershave, of course. But the so that kind of coolness under pressure, but still, we still are able to see in Roger Moore's depiction, Roger Moore, James Bond under stress, and I think that is made evident so nicely in the crocodile farm. And so right when Whisper takes, right, he says take him to the farm, and he's caught on the island there, and then right, and he says, oh, you can, if he talks about the pen or or pencil and jam it into the thing. And so I love the bit, if you notice when he says that, Roger Moore does a little thing where he's reaching for his breast pocket. And I think what he's trying to do is he's trying to find if he has like a pen or pencil or some kind of writing utensil that he can use as a possible stabbing implement to protect himself. I love that little thing that he does. That's such a great moment. And when he's on the thing and he's like trying to get the boat with his watch, but he finds out it's tight, and it's like and then the animals get on the island and he's starting to sweat, and you see a bit where he does a little thing where just so you can tell that he's wiping off a little panic sweat. You know what I mean? And he mentioned it in the documentary for Octopussy, but he says, Roger Moore said, in the documentary, James Bond doesn't sweat, right? But here we see James Bond kind of sweating in panic. I think very reasonably so, because I don't know about you, but if I was in that situation that James Bond was in with all those right, I would just be panicking. I would, right, just be rivers of sweat from everything. But what does he do? And then, of course, the great escape that is there, which is one of the great stunts of all Bond films, in my opinion. So that's a great moment. Although I must say, he had the pieces of chicken, right? The raw pieces of chicken there. I actually would have, if I was there, I actually wouldn't have thrown them out so quickly. I would actually have gathered the pieces of chicken, and I would actually have waited until more of the crocodiles had assembled onto the island. Actually, maybe I think it would have been probably more strategically, but maybe it would have been more strategically better to have the pieces of chicken maybe then thrown at once, so then all the crocodiles would have gone one way, and then he could have made his escape with a swim or something like that. I don't know. So I actually would have saved the chicken. I wouldn't have thrown it off so quickly as James Bond did, as he seemed to be doing in that. So ultimately he had no chicken left, and he was just trapped on the island. So I actually would have done that. But maybe he had to fend off one crocodile or alligator, as the case might have been, and in order to just make sure that one lone a beast wouldn't have devoured him on the spot. So maybe the situation called for him to throw the chicken rather early, but at least I think it was raw chicken, right? But anyway, so that's Roger Moore in a nutshell, I think, and what a brilliant debut, and I think a lot of people feel the same way. And so cool, so fresh, and so I think it's the kind of jolt that the series needed, because of course we knew that Sean Connery wouldn't be returning. Diamonds Are Forever, and even so, I think Sean Connery. I think I don't think Sean Connery. I think Sean Connery, and we'll talk about Diamonds Are Forever. I love Diamonds Are Forever, but I think that is a nice way. I can't picture the Diamonds Are Forever Sean Connery James Bond. I can't picture that James Bond being able to continue on in subsequent films. You know what I mean? It feels like that James Bond is a different kind of James Bond to the Sean Connery James Bond that we saw up to, say, even Thunderball. Although maybe there's more of a thematic connection or characteristic connection between the You Only Live Twice James Bond and the Diamonds Are Forever James. But that's a conversation for another day, excuse me. But Roger Moore here as James Bond 007, a fantastic debut. And all the hallmarks are there. And here's one thing, though. Here's one thing that I think maybe might be something that is interesting, which is his treatment of Solitaire. That's an interesting one. And in fact, Jane Seymour, and I think many others have commented about how Roger Moore's James Bond here was actually pretty tricky And he was actually pretty much almost a slime ball in a way, in how he tricked Solitaire with the tarot cards and the Lover's card. He had a whole deck of Lover's card waiting, which was, on this as a visual gag. You think about, you look at it at first glance, oh, that's really clever. But then if you think about it, you realize, my goodness, this is actually a really devastating thing, because, the whole, the whole basis for the power of Solitaire, in terms of her being, the high priestess and traversing the world of the living and the dead, is the idea of virginity. And he uses this trick to essentially take her virginity. And so that is a kind of that is, it's pretty low, actually. However, we must also remember that the Lover's card had been picked not once but twice prior to this moment, right? And so Bond picked it when he first met Solitaire at the end there, when he's in the Fillet of Soul restaurant, the part there in Harlem, and the other side of the wall, excuse me, because that's the Harlem bar is where the wall or the table turns, right? So it's the same floor, but it's at the table turns. In the New Orleans restaurant, it actually goes down, so it's actually one level below the ground level. So excuse me. So when Bond is on the same in the Harlem Fillet of Soul, and he meets Solitaire, right? That's where we first see the Lover's card, and so he picks the Lover's card. So that's legitimate. And then the second time we see the Lover's card is when Kananga and Solitaire are talking, I think over some kind of telephone wire conversation call or something, and he says, where's Bond now? Where's Bond now? And she is it death? Is it death? And she can't say, because it's the Lover's card. So she essentially lies. It is death. But she sees the Lover's card there, right? I hope I have my details there, right? So anyway, so that's the second time we see the Lover's card. So in fact, it had already been fated by the cards prior to this little last-minute trick that Roger Moore's James Bond pulls. So I guess you could kind of excuse that moment as being a moment where, okay, yeah, it would have already been fated, so it was in the cards already, so this thing that Roger's Bond did probably wouldn't have changed the course of fate anyway. Okay, I can kind of see that, but still, it was kind of a pretty low thing to do. But still, anyway, we can see ultimately that it was, right, Solitaire, by the end of the film, she's obviously becoming much more, we can get a sense that she seems to be much more independent-willed at the end, especially when she's playing gin with Bond, and then she's in the bed and she's talking out loud and she's saying, of course she's talking about, I think she's in love with Bond, but she's talking about how she feels a certain way in terms of her own womanhood, that is of a totally different tone to the way she's speaking while she is essentially under the control of Kananga. And so, that's maybe a different conversation as well. As is that really a sense of independence, or is it kind of a show of a dependence on yet another man in her life? Right? It's not Kananga now, but it's Bond 007. Okay, that's another conversation for another time. But the point that I wanted to bring up is that it's the tone in her voice seems to suggest that she seems happier at the very end of the film than she does at the very, throughout most of the film. And so, especially when Kananga turns on her quite viciously and essentially condemns her to death, or at least he and, in fact, Baron Samedi does with the death card. Right? So, so going back to that whole tarot card trick that James Bond pulls, I think it was pretty low, but I think circumstances were such that overall, I think it led the way for Solitaire to in fact be free from Kananga. So But of course, I guess he could have freed her without necessarily going to bed with her. Maybe let's put it that way. So, okay, so anyway, just going back here. Sorry about again totally dominating the conversation, but I will go back here. Let's see. Yes. I'm now at the talk here. Oh, ALJ is here, and ALJ says, this is probably my favorite Bond movie after Casino Royale. It's just so fun and action-packed. Yes, yes, it is really fun, and you're absolutely right. And Zyrother and Irwin are talking about New York, how New York looked back then versus how it is now. I haven't been there recently, but last time I was there was maybe 2 years ago. But New York of 2 years ago was certainly different than the New York that we see in Live and Let Die. That's for sure. Let's see. Let's see. Ryan Harding is here. It says Live and Let Daisuke. Thank you very much. Yeah. And let's see. Just gonna scroll down here. Oh, Cooper Glover, 1972. I'm at the point where you're talking about the bus. The bus, I think they didn't know if the top of the bus would fall off when it went under the bridge. Jane Seymour was on the bus, but Roger Moore's stunt double was driving the bus. Yeah, yeah. Jane Seymour mentioned that about in the documentary about how she was on that bus or something. I think what she was mentioning about the bus, about how it did the turn, the skid, I think, which is a really dangerous stunt if you think about it. That top-heavy bus doing a skid, my goodness. But the bus stunt is such an interesting one because the bus stunt is and the way that the bus cuts in half when it goes under the bridge. I thought that was really clever, and in fact, that's an example of how I actually think that I always like to think of Live and Let Die and A View to a Kill as being kind of linked in this way. We'll talk about A View to a Kill later, I hope, but A View to a Kill has an interesting thing where it has a stunt involving a car. A car, and the car gets cut in half as it's being driven. It gets cut in half, and it gets sliced in a different half, and so it becomes cut in quarters, I suppose, or thirds perhaps. But I always like to think that stunt is very reminiscent of the stunt that we saw here in Live and Let Die with the bus getting essentially sliced in half, which is really cool. And in fact, if we were to talk about View to a Kill and Live and Let Die, both being bookends of the Roger Moore era, there's another interesting thing that happens in A View to a Kill involving a recording, because he knows, Bond does, that they're being bugged in their room that they're staying in the chateau. And so he turns on a recording in order to throw off the scent of the people who are listening into the conversation, Zorin and stuff. So he has a recording that was made beforehand. And I always like how that is very similar, right, to how Kananga evades or he tricks the surveillance people at the very beginning, right? I wish to point out that clicks and it goes on, and so it's a very similar tactic that he uses, and I know that Bond wasn't present when Kananga did that trick, but I'd like to think that maybe Bond learned something from Kananga, such that maybe he decided to use that same trick when he had to go on his mission in The View to a Kill. And I know it's not a perfect thing because, again, Bond wasn't there, and how could he have known that Kananga did that trick? No one could have known. Only we as audience members know that. But still, I like that little connection between the two. And the bus stunt in Live and Let Die is certainly there as well. So thank you very much for that. And Cooper Glover says, was mentioning, talking about Jeffrey Holder, I think, and how and the 7-Up commercials. Yeah, so Jeffrey Holder it plays Baron Samedi, and this actually is Baron. Well, actually, let me talk about the other villains because I haven't spoken about them, and I haven't spoken about Solitaire either. But I should really go through the chat first. So let me now go through the chat. Rod says, I was an extra. Oh, this is interesting. I was an extra on the first Highlander movie. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. That's interesting. And Sean Connery was totally hopeless trying to ride a horse. And you know that. Thank you, Rod. You taught me something new today. So thank you very much. Wow, that's so interesting. Let's see. And damn fool, idealistic Crusader Spencer's talking about the pre-cut of the bus on rollers, right? So, and Kevin says the bus chase, it's so inventive and action-packed while being funny. Yes, that's a really good point too. It is funny. It's very, I love, the funniest thing about that the bus chase is when um, it is. There's a lot of clever things about it, and Quarrel Junior, and what and that's really clever. But the thing that I laugh so much about is when we get the bus turns, and it's still double decker, and a bus turns, and we see a close up of the sign of the low bridge ahead, and then the music swells, the George Martin, right, the living like da da, and then we get a shot of the guys in the car chasing him, right, because we know, like, everyone knows, oh no, there's a bridge and it can't make it. And I love the shot. It's like da da, and we get a shot of the people chasing him, and they're so happy with themselves. They're like laughing and smiling. Yeah, we got this. We got, and I love the smugness of these guys driving. Like, they're so happy. They were a bit too premature in their celebrations, as we see, of course, but I just love, they're just really happy, and there's something about their happiness makes me laugh every time, and just and they're like not just smiling, they're like nodding, they're looking at each other, yeah, like this. I love that moment. But anyway, yeah, okay, so and oh, that's interesting. So Damn Fool saying this was the last film in the series fully shot. Thank you, fully shot by Ted Moore, who is the signature cameraman of the series. Also interesting is going back to spherical lenses, which I think give the quality of realism. So that's interesting. So I don't know the relationship between spherical lenses and the quality of the image, but I'll take your word for it about in terms of how it might be seen to be depicting a sense of realism versus a kind of there is a way in which light is captured in this film, Live and Let Die, that's for sure. And I think that's what I was trying to get at in terms of its 70s feel. I think there is I don't know if realism is what I was thinking of, but there is a sense of it's being like a it doesn't feel like a postcard. It doesn't feel like a glossy image. It feels like it is lived in. And so it's an early 70s feel, so it has a lived in 70s feel. So maybe you and I are thinking on the same wavelength on that part, Spencer. And Cooper Glover, some of the stunts they only did once or twice because it was so dangerous. Yeah, that's true for this film, I think, and also for the others. Although I think the stunt with Ross Kananga running across there, I think that was done a number of times, as we see in the documentary. And one time he actually caught his shoe on one of the mouths there, and the tooth caught on the shoe, which was really, really shocking. And I love how the documentary, when they're showing the footage, and like we have the serious voice of Patrick Macnee saying, here now, or I forget the exact words, here now is the footage of the onion, and so grave, and the music's like that, dan, 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 da, 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 it's that really serious kind of tone. It's real, dan, 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 I love that. I love how the documentary is presenting this information. By the way, the documentaries that we first saw during the early 2000s DVD run, they are the best documentaries, among the best that I've seen. I love them. That's one of the reasons why I love this early series of DVD. Just some great stuff, and really, really helpful all around. So entertaining. Anyway, just scrolling down here. Let's see. Wolfgrat says more generally, Moore is a more affable, laid back, and conventionally charming character, as indeed, to be honest, Moore was as a person, because he was a lovable bloke. Really well said, Wolfgratz. Let's see. Damn Fool says, Live and Let Die has a different flavor because unlike Diamonds Are Forever and Golden Gun, there's no involvement from series writer Richard Maibaum. Yes. Let's see. Richard Maibaum too. That is, we'll have to talk about him more when we're talking about other Richard Maibaum films. I guess we already have in what we've talked about before, but I think with Richard Maibaum and his contribution, that's right. But that's a really important point, Spencer. I forgot to bring it up, but you're absolutely right about that. Excuse me while it's like Albert Finney in Murder on the Orient Express. But sorry about that. I need to drink a little bit because my stomach is growling a little bit, grumbling. And because it's early for me and I haven't had breakfast yet. So if my stomach grumbles and the mic catches it, I apologize. I'm not, it's not gas or anything like that. I'm not passing wind or anything. It's just, it's my stomach growling because I haven't had breakfast and it's early. So, that's one of the things I've done YouTube for maybe 3 years or so, and I've had a great time with it. But one of the things I'm always worried about is like when I'm doing a video, like, do I have like, is there some kind of hair out of place or something? No. I always think because I use a mic and sometimes I just, move. I don't sit on a chair. I'm actually sitting on the floor. This is the floor, and I always sit on the floor because it's just how I usually do things. And so I have to sit. But sometimes what happens is I kind of move in my place. And so sometimes it'll just make a sound on the ground, because it's a flat surface. And so sometimes you can have a little thing that drags across the ground like this or something. And but sometimes when I hear the video play back, it actually sounds like, it doesn't sound like something that's being dragged across the ground. It actually sounds like something what's the phrase? Like cutting the cheese. And so, it's a little bit embarrassing. So I always have to try to be careful not to make even sounds of dragging books or things or DVDs across the floor, lest it sounds like cutting cheese. But, any stomach growling is actually stomach growling. So I never know exactly how it'll sound until I listen to the playback, but I don't listen to all the playback all the time. So, but in any event, I am getting a little bit hungry. So, so pardon me if there are some unwanted growling noises, but I'll try to cover that up with some liquid sustenance. Let's see. But what was I saying? Oh, so back to the conversation. Excuse me. Rod says, I feel more money was spent on this movie than in the early Connery movies. Yeah, that's, I don't know offhand what the budget was for this. But that's a good point. But there was a lot of spectacle in the early Connery movies. That's for sure. I mean, if you think about You Only Live Twice, I mean, that's spectacle upon spectacle upon spectacle. I mean, and talk about the location shooting as well. So, but it's a really good point. Maybe when compared to Diamonds Are Forever, I'm not sure. But let's see. Kevin says, throughout the Bond series, there are certain films that feel like a jump forward in time from the last. Live and Let Die feels like a huge leap forward from Diamonds Are Forever. Yeah, that's a really interesting point, the comparison between the two. I do love Diamonds Are Forever for reasons which I will try to cover when we talk about Diamonds Are Forever. But I see your point entirely as well. I think also because it just feels different, too. I mentioned that this is part of a triumvirate, and how it does feel like it is consistent among the three films, Diamonds and Live and Let Die and Golden Gun. I get that. But also, I understand your comment too. And if I were to agree with you even more, which I do, I would say too that I think that's helped very much so by also the musical landscape of the film. Because as we know, this is the film, the other two films are John Barry based, which are great scores, by the way. I do love them. But there is something that stands out. It just pops off the page, as it were, with the accompaniment being brought by George Martin and his take on the theme, and also employing the Paul McCartney song Live and Let Die, which is which is really great. There's something about James Bond songs, right? They either become known for being a James Bond song, or they have a life of their own. And I think that there are some songs, for me anyway, that seem to have a life of their own. I think A View to a Kill is one of those songs. For me, it seems to have a life of its own. I think also like a song like Surrender from Tomorrow Never Dies. I think that's like a James Bond song, and I don't think it and I don't think it has to, but I think it can't operate in my mind outside of the universe of James Bond. But it's fine though. I think that's fine. And that's not a knock against the song, because I think it's one of my favorite songs. I think actually the same is true in an interesting way with the song Goldfinger. It's a brilliant song, but it always operates as a James Bond song. I think in part because its lyric, the Goldfinger lyric, is about a villain in James Bond, right? He loves only gold, and that's right. That's Goldfinger. He's a man with a Midas touch, right? So it's automatically in my mind linked with the film, and it always will, and it's great for it, right? But there are some songs that seem to also have seem to be almost independent of the film sometimes, and I actually think "Live and Let Die" is one of those songs. I think a lot of people too feel the same way, in part due to, of course, the great strength and popularity of Paul McCartney and what would have been at this time Wings, I suppose, and so excuse me, and so this film, it really I think really has its own life, due also to the thrust that is given by the musical landscape, which is a brilliant choice, by the way. I do have to bring this up though, which is the I don't know how you feel about this, but I know some people don't mind. Maybe a lot of people don't mind, but maybe other people do mind. This is one of the things that I kind of have to sort of just, I don't know, like the lyric of Live and Let Die. What is it? When you were young and your heart was an open book, used to say live and let live. You know you did, you know you did, you know you did. Here it is. But this ever-changing world in which what is it? In which we live in, makes you give in and cry. Now, I don't know what the lyric is here, and I think if the phrase is, and please correct me if I'm wrong, someone, if the phrase is if this ever-changing world in which we live in, if it's that, then it's grammatically incorrect, right? If it's in which we are living, then it's okay, right? Because if it's in which we live in, makes you give in and cry, that actually makes more sense in terms of a lyric rhyme, because the phrase live in would rhyme directly with give in. So live in and give in. But that doesn't make grammatical sense, because in which we live in means that there would be two ins, two preposition ins, and that doesn't work. You have one extra preposition, which isn't correct. You have to say which we live in or in which we live. But if it's in which we are living, ing, then that's less of a complete, clean rhyme with the phrase given. Living isn't cleanly rhyming with given, but it's close enough. And so I think in that sense, if we have a what's the lyric? Is it living or is it live in? Which is it? I always try to. I mean, I can't tell, because of course, when you listen to songs, it's like it's really hard to catch. But is it? I always listen to it, and it always sounds to my untrained ear to be live in, rather than living. But I don't know. And I always try to look online and stuff, but you can't always trust online, because it's not always the case. Maybe they've changed it after the fact. I don't know. I don't know what the accurate lyric source is. Sometimes I've seen it online as live in. Sometimes I've seen it online as living. So I'm not sure what it is, but if anyone has an indication about that, let me, because that's always driven me up the wall whenever I've listened to that song. If it's live in, it's not, unless I'm totally off on my grammar. But anyway, if I guess if it's living, it makes sense. But I don't know. It doesn't sound like ing living to me. But anyway, sorry about that. But still, but besides that point, and hopefully if I'm wrong in that, or not wrong, but hopefully if the grammar as used in that film, in that song is correct, then that's a very minor point anyway. I think in terms of the way that lyrics or language are used in songs, I get that. So, but yeah, the song is great. I worked I kind of worked part-time in the film library of my university when I was an undergrad, and I remember my boss, who was this, he loved films like Scorsese and Spike Lee, and he loved the sort of 70s gritty New York films, and 80s gritty New York films. And but he loved the song of Live and Let Die. He absolutely loved that. He said such a great thing. It's like the whole film is being expressed in that song, and it's like three different songs are being like in one. So you're getting like three songs for the price of one. And he thought that was really, really cool. And it has a kind of, how the Paul McCartney and actually, in earlier times the Beatles, they sometimes did that. They had this thing where they'd have like two separate like song elements, and they put them together into this like mega song, like A Day in the Life. Remember that song? That's essentially two separate songs from Paul and John, but they were mixed together in a really interesting way. Or what was it? There are some other examples that are escaping me at the moment, but Live and Let Die has that same feel of like different songs seem to be edited together, but the fusion is actually really clever. And I love the way that the beat suddenly just stops and just goes from fast and then slow, la 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 da na 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 da na na, and then da na. I just love it. It's great. It's like everything, all the moods are like there in like one thing, and it's like everything is being expressed in that one song. That's great. And I think my boss was onto something when he was describing it that way. But yeah, that's such a great, and that adds to the tenor of how this film stands out. You're absolutely right. Actually, maybe I should amend my earlier statement about how these films in the triumvirate really seem to be part of the group. I do stand by that statement, I think, as a general proposition, but yes, you're absolutely right too at the same time. If we were to think about these films specifically, then Live and Let Die does stand out, I think, and it has to do with the music, George Martin's take on the song, the James Bond theme. I love how his James Bond theme, it's like, it's like there's the bit where it's like da 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 da, right? And I love how George Martin's theme, it doesn't do like the da 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 da, but it goes like da 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 da. I love how it waits a little, like da 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 da. I love that. That's so cool. And it's there's a kind of almost a kind of what's the phrase? It's I mean, for lack of a better phrase, there's a prog rock type of vibe to it, which is really, really cool. And I love too that the way that the theme is interwoven is it's effortless. It's really, really effortless. And the I know a lot is maybe sometimes George Martin. There's orchestrations especially when he worked with the Beatles and like Yellow Submarine, and I get that, but George Martin's orchestrations, when they're good, they're really, really good. And so I think here the way that the orchestra style music is employed together with the rock style, I think is really great, and so I think it's really great stuff. Really, really great stuff. And again, it's just giving a different flavor, tenor to the whole film and making it stand out even more. and it's just little details that are just splendid. So thank you very much for talking about this. This is really great. Let's see. Excuse me here. Yeah, Wolfrat says, well, he, Roger Moore, is quite ruthless with Gloria Hendry, who plays Rosie Carver. Poor soul. But to be honest, I didn't really buy into Roger's performance. Yeah, that's right. I didn't buy into Roger's performance. Yes, I think it was an act that he was putting on, and so I'd like to think it's that way. Again, I think I'd like to think I'm supported in my theory by how he says the word or the name Rosie at the end there. I do sense a sense of humanity in that calling out. Let's see, just scrolling down here. Wolfgrat says, I think Yavid was pretty unhappy with his ending. You know, oh, okay, so this is interesting. So I do want to, oh, and Damnful Idealistic Crusader says, by this point, Bond has been onto Rosie's case and has smelled the trap. He's also exacting a sort of revenge for the death of Baines. Yes, so that's a good point. So he does have justification for being vicious in his treatment of Rosie, because he's dealing with someone who has, right, right, as M puts it at the beginning, 3 of our agents have been killed. So they know the agents have been killed. Although, you have to think, right? Well, anyway, excuse me. What was I saying? So, Rosie. So, the one of the things that, excuse me, one of the things that really confused me and still confuses me to this day. Do you know the answer to this? What was the deal with the Queen of Cups? Who provided the card to Bond at breakfast? You know, the Queen of Cups was it? Queen of Cups in an upside down position, right? So what was all that about? I always try, and I try to look up theories online or something, and if there's something in the book, maybe I missed it. I'm not sure, but I can never tell who provided the card. Was it just a little, maybe, was it part of the complimentary service of the hotel suite where they were staying, maybe? And it was just part of fate, and how, you know, and how the card fell, and that was just a part of the deal. So it wasn't necessarily someone, I don't know what the deal with the Queen of Cups thing. And so I'd never really got that. I suppose for me in my head, the theory that works for me the best would be maybe it was just part of the complimentary service of the hotel and just happened to fall in the way that it did. And so then Bond takes that and interprets it by going to the tarot card shop, wherever it is, and then finding out what the meaning is. But even if that were the case, Bond doesn't believe in tarot, right? He doesn't believe in it. So, or does he? I'm not sure. Maybe he does, especially if we think about how essentially delighted he seemed to be when he pulled the Lover's card when he first met Solitaire. I don't know. But again, at the same time, we know that he tricked Solitaire by using the whole stacked deck of tarot cards against her. And so, does he believe in tarot? Does he not believe in tarot? I'm not sure. But this theory of mine would have to, it relies on the fact that he believes in tarot. But I don't know if Bond believes in tarot. He doesn't strike me as one who would believe in that. So, right, because he looks right through the curse of Baron Samedi at the very end there, with the whole tan tan tan. He gets it. So I never understood that thing with the card, and so that's one of the things that I never understood as a kid growing up. How did he figure out Rosie was a traitor? I never knew that. So that's one thing. Although there's one great moment when I think Rosie's a really underrated character. I think she's innocent. She's sort of in over her head. She's really out of her depth. She's trying hard to figure out what's going on, but she's really kind of an innocent character that's just doing the best that she can. And so with that, I find her character to be quite. I mean, the function of her in the plot, of course, is as a traitor. So in that sense, she's not a good character at all. But as a kind of a human being, I think she's rather sweet. And of course, I would have liked to have seen more of her. But there's a really lovely moment where, you know, when they get off the boat and they're walking on the dock, and Bond and Rosie are just walking together on the dock. And there's a moment where Rosie's just looking off, almost like she's looking into the camera. And I really love that. It's such, I don't know, that's such a tender moment. There's just something really nice about that. And she's smiling and she looks so happy, and the weather is nice. And I don't know, that's a really nice moment. I don't know. But anyway, that's the Rosie plot there. It sort of started early and ended still relatively early, but still, I think it was a. I think she's. I really like her character, and she's really. I think that character is underrated. Of course, it has a certain function in the plot. Maybe that has to do with it, but still. Anyway, let's see. So let's see. What was I saying? So anyway, going back to the chat here, and okay. Let's see. Just going in here. Oh, there was mention about Yaphet Kotto and the ending to Kananga, and so I should go into a discussion of the villains here, if you don't mind, and go from there. I did speak a little bit about Kananga and my view about his operations, which I think are really quite fascinating. But I think this is a really great rogues gallery of villains. I think this is fantastic. So larger than life and just so quirky in all of their functions. So who am I talking about? I'm talking about, first of all, Tee-Hee. And okay, so Tee-Hee is great, and Tee-Hee, of course, serves as the heavy, the physical heavy, right? He is the one of all the villains, including Whisper. He is the one that has the physical edge over Bond because of his size and also because of the arm, right? And I've mentioned them before, but I'll say it again. The great people at JBR, James Bond Radio. I love James Bond Radio so much. I recommend it wholeheartedly for anyone who loves Bond. They love Bond, and they do impressions sometimes, and they do and there was one thing where they were talking about Live and Let Die or something. I forget what episode it was, and it's what is it? They have the thing where it's like they're trying to do impressions of voices, and they do a thing with Tee-Hee, which is the thing with at the end when he's fighting on the train, and he's like, I can't do it, but it's so, you know, that laugh that he's got. It's right, Tee-Hee. Oh. That's just it's and then when Bond does the thing with the wiring and he snips it and he's like and then there's a moment where you actually hear the grumbling of Tee-Hee and he's stuck on the bar there, and it's hard to hear, but you can kind of make out he's trying to say how, ha. It's all noises, but I think he's saying help. In that scuffle of noise, I think, I'm not sure. Help! That's great. I love it. But there's such great. You know, this is what the part I like most: feeding time, and the way that he smiles, and the light just reflects off of his glasses, and just the whole look, and the hook. And I love how the hook is obviously it's obviously he has an arm, right? And so it's such that because you have an arm, if you have a hook, it becomes longer than the length of your arm, and so it kind of has a bend to it, which means that it's like a hand, that it becomes like an obvious cinematic costume in a way, but still it is, because it's covered by the sleeve of the coat. But still, that is such a cool thing. It's like kind of like the what we would have loved to have seen from a villain like Doctor No, but it's like Doctor No's hands, which were really cool in that, but we didn't see a lot of the hands there. And then we saw a follow through, I think, played out really nicely in this film, which is another debut film, right, from a different actor, of course. But that is a great moment, and Teehee is such a great villain. And I like how, Butterhook, and I like all that stuff. That's and he's just like why didn't he I love that, because he's trying to take off Bond's watch with the hook. I think he could have used his other hand to just take off the watch. I don't know, maybe he was being too arrogant. He's like, I'm going to show you how I can use this hook. I can really, is it a hook? It's not really a hook, is it? It's more like it's like it opens and closes. Excuse me. It's an open and close mechanism. So is that officially a hook, or is it more like I don't know what that is. It a claw? But I'm not sure what it's a claw hook. I guess I'm not sure. But anyway, so that's cool. That is so cool. And the one thing too that I love though about this film, and for example about Teehee when he takes him to the farm. Okay, all right. You have to think, okay, these people want Bond dead, right? They want him dead. They want him eliminated. Of course, they're going to go to elaborate efforts to try to kill Bond, but they want him dead. And so they spend all this money, this travel expense, to go to this farm out in the middle of nowhere, which is actually also a lab. A lab to make, I don't know what, maybe it's part of the drugs, I don't know, but that's a great hideout, whatever it is. But it's very impractical, which is a great thing about Bond, the impracticality of villain layers and laboratories, which is really great. And we have another one here, and I don't know what the heck they're doing, but it's great. But anyway, and to have something like this where you have a lab that has really that probably dealing with a lot of sensitive materials and chemicals, to have it right next to a live and very volatile crocodile farm, I think is quite an interesting thing. I suppose they didn't think about the crocodiles or alligators, as the case may be, leaving the pit and going into the lab as one did. So, and it only takes one to upend the entire operation. Then, of course, Bond takes advantage and blows the whole thing to smithereens. But anyway, what was I saying? So, the whole setup with the farm and Teehee and Adam too, because Adam's also there as well. So everyone wants Bond dead, and so what do? They go to elaborate lengths to have him die a spectacular and creative death, which is one of the great traits of a Bond filmer. You don't just bang or something like that. No. It has to be much more elaborate, right? Much more creative. And so what do? They take him to the farm and they put him out into the middle of this island around this this kind of pond, I suppose, and they leave him out to die. But what do they do after they withdraw the bridge, the walkway? What do? Do they stick around and watch and confirm just to make sure that Bond is actually killed by the crocs and the alligators as he's supposed to do? No. They go to all this trouble and elaborate efforts to set this whole thing up, and they're like, bye. I'm gonna go inside now. I'm not going to stay outside and watch you die. I've wanted to see you die throughout the entire film. I have been your antagonist. You have been like a thorn in my side, so it would be so satisfying for me to see you actually bite the dust. But what am I going to do at this moment when I have you in my hands and you are about to die? At this moment, what am I going to do? Am I going to stay there and watch you? Oh, no. I and all of my men are going to go inside and assume that you are going to die. So long. So that's I love this about James Bond films. This is the best, the absolute best. And I suppose we can attribute that to a kind of arrogance on the part of Teehee, right? Which I suppose we did see if we go back to the whole butterhook thing in the watch, the Rolex. Maybe that was a sign of him being too arrogant. He should have just used his free hand, but no, he decided to use his hook or claw. Maybe the same thing here with the farm. He should have just stayed around and just made sure that the Bond got killed in the way that they planned. But no. He was too arrogant. He decided to walk into the whole lab and just have the whole thing explode. But anyway, I love that about James Bond films. And I love that about Teehee. That's a great one. So that's Teehee. Okay. Next is Whisper. Okay, Whisper is an interesting one because Whisper, he's like, he gets really almost peeved if you ask him too much, or if he has to ask a second time about, he's talking about the bottle, right? Open it. No, you don't want me to open it. That sort of thing. I love that. And so he's got that going for it. He's got the great car with the darts, the poison darts out of the mirrors there, which is the side mirrors, were very clever. Although I don't know if that's due to his ingenuity or it's just he was assigned that car. I'm not sure. Of course, the voice is classic, and of course it's great because his voice is actually his undoing at the end because he is unable to call out his boss in time to warn him about Bond, and so he's and then he gets kicked into the airtight canister, and in fact we assume that he meets his end in that, unless we think maybe do you think Bond and Solitaire, after they have defeated Kananga, do you think they were humane enough to let Whisper out of that thing? I'm not sure if they did that. I'm not sure, but yeah, but maybe Whisper's still alive. You never know with these sorts of things. Maybe he's still out there, and it could be something like Baron Samedi as well. So, and that's another one too. Baron Samedi. Wow, what a larger than life character too. Tall, right? The man who cannot die. Right, and I love the guy who announces that too at the hotel, and that wonderful that he has a great sideburns. Oh, it's such a great man. But you're right, Baron Samedi, the man who cannot die, and his laugh, right, when he essentially condemns Solitaire to death, right at the end there, and after Kananga says, you knew that, oh. I think Baron Sam just rubs it in everyone's face, like, and you realize, of course, at that moment that maybe Baron Samedi is, in fact, much more of maybe he has the power, the same as Solitaire, which is an interesting theory to have, and it's very consistent with what we see at the very end, too. Of course, there are hints that maybe Baron Samedi is indeed human. We think that he dies at the hand of those snakes. Although we're not quite sure at the very end. Although, could that be a robot too? Like the thing that comes out from the ground there. That thing that comes out of the ground, and when Bond shoots the head, that looks so real. Does anyone else feel the same way? That looked real, and when he shot the head and the eyes go like. That was a dummy, right? That was like some kind of prosthetic, right? That wasn't like a real Jeffrey Holder his face being what is it? What's the phrase now? Deep fake, or that we have now. That wasn't available. That technology wasn't available in 72, 73. So, right? So that's an actual thing that am I right? They made it, and it just looks so real. Wow. Amazing. And when it's shot off and the half of the head is like broken off and the eyes bulge up and he's got that face like, oh, that freaked me out as a kid so much. And then he breaks the entire thing and just shatters. It's so cool. Wow. But Baron Samedi is a character. That's great. Now, we have to say that when it comes to his fighting skills, Baron Samedi maybe isn't the best fighter, as we can see. He has a lot of build-up, and he does a little spin, right? He does a spin. I call it the Obi-Wan Kenobi spin, because as we know, maybe for those of us who know Star Wars, Obi-Wan Kenobi likes to do a spin. I think it has to do with trying to increase some kind of momentum. in terms of his strength with the Force, I think, in that film. But maybe here it's a similar kind of thing with Baron Samedi. He does a little spin, and it has a nice twirl of his kind of cape there, and he has a, and he uses breath, and he's like, and he has a little, and he just does a thing with the machete, and Bond just boom, right? Game over, right? And that's great. And Bond really focuses in on his weakness, which is, I think, his the mid portion of his body, because he is tall. So he has his arm, but what that means is that the space between his head and his lower part of his body is wide enough for Bond to get in there, I think, or to grab. As long as he can grab the knife, he can get in there. And so that's what he did. And I think Baron Samedi doesn't have enough upper body strength in order to compete one-on-one against Bond in that way. But again, by the end of the film, perhaps we realize that he didn't maybe even need the physical strength at all, because, as I say, maybe he is indeed the man who cannot die. I would love to see a sequel to Baron Samedi one day. I always thought it would be cool. You know how they have, we're going to talk about For Your Eyes Only later, and you know, there's the opening title sequence in For Your Eyes Only, and there's an interesting thing about how we have a callback to a very famous character that appeared in many past Bond films in the sequence of For Your Eyes Only, the opening sequence. I would have loved to have seen, like, maybe also in that area, maybe like Baron Samedi, like his head pop out from behind a wall or something. That would have been so cool, or anything like that. Incidentally, was there a Baron Samedi reference made in the film Die Another Day? You know, they were making all these references to past Bond films, but I think that would have been really interesting too. In any event, Baron Samedi must return one day. I think they were trying to make a kind of callback, in terms of visual terms, in the film Spectre at the very beginning. The Day of the Dead and the costuming and the like, but it's of course it's not the same as Baron Samedi himself. Of course, the man who cannot die. And mental note to myself: I must try one day to at least consider attempting to have sideburns of that epicness. But so that's Geoffrey Holder. Okay. And Adam, I've mentioned a little bit about Adam and how he is the leader of the boat chase, and I think he holds himself very well. Although, what is it? He kind of, you know, I don't know how he was able to lose Bond at the very end there, for Bond to get one up on him with the gasoline and everything like that. But maybe that's just an indication of how good Bond is under pressure. But anyway, there's that. And then of course there's Kananga, and I have to talk about that ending. The ending fight between Kananga and Bond is, I think, really great in its weirdness. It is so weird. What a great way to end. Like, if you're gonna end, I don't know, I'm not an actor, okay? I'm not an actor, and so I don't know all the ins and outs of acting. Of course, it's all about also, you know, one's how one's personage and how one's likeness is portrayed on screen, and there's a lot entailed that I understand. I hope I can appreciate that, and so I can't claim to have a great. I don't have the inner knowledge of those sorts of things, but. If I were an actor, and if someone asked me, okay, your character is the main villain in a film, do you want your character to go out in a way that we've always seen? Like, do you want him to go out in, like, I don't know, like we're going to talk about, like, there are some villains in Bond who go out in a quite, actually, very, relatively speaking, kind of quiet or unspectacular way. And actually, I find those moments to be somewhat, as a viewer, to be somewhat unsatisfying, to a certain degree anyway. You always want your head villain to really go out in a kind of blaze of glory type of way, because there's a satisfying thing, because that's the way these films work in terms of watching them. So, but sometimes Bond villains go out in a kind of quieter way that doesn't necessarily, in my eyes, correspond to the level of villainy that they have exhibited throughout most of the film up to that point. Well, not so for Kananga. Not so for Kananga. So what do we have with him? So first we have that wonderful like thing with the knife, and he's got that thing with like the thing over the head, and like tries to do, and that's an interesting thing too. Like, he does the thing, and he's going like this, like with his arm, excuse me, with his arms, and like which is really creepy. And the look on Yaphet Kotto's face there is like really creepy. He's got that smile, and before that too, do you notice the way I love Yaphet Kotto uses his face in this moment when he's slicing Bond's arm to get the blood drip into the water to attract the shark? You notice what Yaphet Kotto does with his teeth? I can't quite mimic it, but he does this thing with his teeth. It's like this, you know, almost like, I don't know what, like, I don't know. How do I explain this? I think that's such a cool thing because, like, that's what my little, I have a son who's now 4. He turned 4 recently. And whenever he gets like really excited, he kind of does this thing with his mouth where he kind of goes like this, because when he's really into something. And I always see Yaphet Kotto's face at this moment, like that's what a little kid who's really into something would do. It's just like what we saw in the film Goldeneye, boys, your boys with toys. That's what he is. He's like a young boy here. And I love that kind of playfulness in his villainy, what Yaphet Kotto brings to it. And that's a little detail that I think is very, very clever. But then going back to the fight and this thing and the knife moves, I would like to think that maybe he trained in weaponry in the same school as that of Baron Samedi, because they have a similar kind of style to. It's a little bit different. I think Yaphet Kotto, the weapon is shorter. It's a knife rather than the longer machete, of course, of Baron Samedi. But still, they have a similar kind of, like, there's a stance that he does at the beginning, which is really, I think JBR, James Bond Radio, had a really interesting theory. It's almost like a ritualistic preparation before the final duel, which I think is an interesting theory. But there's that. Hold on, let me just. Sorry about this. I'm going to have to cut off my mic and go to power. So the mic sound is going to be coming from the phone here. So I apologize. So I'm going to bring it a little bit closer. The reason is because I have to plug in my phone to the I have to plug it in because I'm running low on power. But what time? 8:30. Okay, so we're almost going to be finished anyway. But sorry about this. The quality of the sound is going to be a little bit poorer. So I hope you can forgive me. But I hope you can hear me. Is that okay? But what was I? So Yaphet Kotto's fight here. So that has a ritualistic stance, which I think JBR talked about really well. But it's really weird. And the thing that he does with his hands, I don't know if he's trying to maybe, he is a little like a fake out, which is clever. But in fact, it doesn't work out in the end, because it doesn't really trick Bond. Bond is immediately able to counter, and so that he's able to unarm Kananga, and they have that little 1-2 before they both fall into the water, and then they're in the water. And this is really clever too. Like, we're expected all this time as Bond is fighting, he still had the shark pellet in his mouth, and he's fighting. That takes skill. That takes a lot of skill. And when they're fighting in the water, and like Bond is like behind him, and they see the shark, I love the bit where Kananga's like, what, oh, that's because that's the thing that a kid would do too. It's like we're all fighting, but then, oh, no, we gotta stop, timeout. That's like Kananga's timeout moment, I think. Oh, that's so great. And then, of course, the pièce de résistance, which is, of course, the shark pellet with the pin out and then stuck into the mouth, and then he shoves him into the water again, which is a similar move that Bond did with Bambi and Thumper in Diamonds Are Forever. But, okay. But anyway, so we do that, and then we have the final thing, which just comes out of nowhere. The shark pellet just like blah, boom. And if you notice, the camera does it does a like a little post-production type of zoom. It's like it's something that it's not a zoom in of the camera. I think it feels more like a zoom in that they applied after like as an after effect into the thing, in order, I think, to diminish the unreality of the moment, because it's probably the most ludicrous moment in the entire film. But I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I think it's if you're gonna go out, what's the phrase? Go out with a bang. And so that's an interesting thing. Maybe it would have been interesting to see more of a fight, prolonged fight between Kananga and Bond. But again, I think we're meant to understand that Kananga is not a fighter. Maybe he has been trained in weaponry, but he doesn't seem to have the physical strength as Bond. So maybe that accounts for the fact that his physical fight with Bond is relatively short. And then this final demise with the explosion via shark pellet, which is an interesting thing. So, of course, we can try to go into the whole physics of this, or the biology of this, and think, okay, would the shark pellet inside your mouth, or maybe swallowed in your belly, would that really therefore deplete all of your inner organs and blood supply, which apparently this did, because when he explodes like a balloon, and there's air and there's nothing inside. There's no, like, if you think about, I mean, I don't want to think too much about it, but if you really think about it, if he exploded that way, you'd see a lot more blood and carnage than you actually did. And so he's a balloon. So of course, we can try to imagine that, but this is, I think, in keeping with the fact that this is still a fantasy kind of film, a comic book type of movie, in the best sense of those terms. And so and it's also in many ways also kind of like a kids film in that way. And so you don't want to see you don't want to see anything bloodier than what we saw in the film. And I think it's in keeping with the Bond tone, what they're doing, kind of PG rating type of thing. So uh that is great. I love the like I mean the the it's obvious, like, well, let's what do we call it? Let's call it Kananga, and let's call it Kananga's blow up doll. Okay, so the blow up doll, I love how they tried to make him, the blow up doll, as similar in appearance as Kananga as possible, all the way down to the costume and what he's got around his neck and all that stuff. But it's obviously like when it comes out of the water, his lower jaw or something is just completely out of whack with the rest of his head. I love that. It's just so like, and like, that's just great. And what was it? You're right, right. He always did have an inflated opinion of himself, but um, and like, and we're led to believe that Solitaire, like, with all the stuff that's going on, she didn't even think to look. All she's doing is like look, going like this. She didn't even think to look. I mean, it's maybe it's, maybe it's kind of like a la, what is it, the what, Raiders of the Lost Ark or something like that. Don't look. But it's like, she didn't even think, like, if I were Solitaire in that position, I would like be looking. I'm like, what the heck is going on? I'd be so curious. But I suppose maybe it was in the moment. There's a shark. She's tied up. She's at a great height. So maybe she's really nervous. So maybe that accounts for the fact that she wasn't looking. And so, and of course, without her line, we wouldn't have been able to get the inflated opinion line. And so I understand the function of her not looking in the course of the narrative and the dialogue. But still, if I were in Solitaire's position, I would have looked. But anyway, so that's it. But I think it's great. I think it's great. And I have to talk now about Solitaire. We're almost at the end here, but I haven't even spoken about Solitaire. Jane Seymour. I don't know, but I don't know about you, but I'm sure I I am I know I belong to a generation of people, generations maybe, of people who, just fell in love with Jane Seymour and Solitaire. And there is a I don't know, there's something, I mean, for lack of a better word, magical whenever she's on screen. And it's, of course, the character of Solitaire, but it's also what Jane Seymour brings to the character. And there's like the thing about her, there's the ceremonial costume that she has, which is, I think, when she's sitting down and she has a little fight with Kananga, and she says, things become unclear, and then she stands up from her desk there. But it's like, like the costume is part of the wall there or something. That's really clever, and of course, we described her relationship with Bond, and how I described how I think that there is a sense of her feeling more, maybe for lack of a better phrase, more liberated by the end. We can tell because she seems more independent in terms of her beating Bond at gin, and what she says at the end when she's in the dark waiting for Bond, and the touch of your hand, and that thing. Of course, Teehee intervenes, of course, but. Um, and there's a kind of playfulness there too. It's like, and she's like, well, that wasn't very funny, and she doesn't realize what was going on. She doesn't see like there's kind of an open window and like things broken, and she doesn't realize that like a huge fight has transpired. But of course, she was trapped in the bed there, so of course she couldn't have seen another place where she didn't necessarily see what was going on. Um, uh, and but there's that, and the character Solitaire brings a sense of the otherworldly as well, because of the positions that she has, the high priestess role, the tarot card reading, the sense of the supernatural, which I think really is great, and it's done just enough so that we maybe in the same shoes as Bond can maybe explain it away in real terms, but at the same time there's still enough there to play with, and so we can imagine the possibility of, yes, indeed, there being a supernatural link, because she did manage to uh, uh, use the tarot cards in an effective way. So that is indicative of some kind of power, that's for sure. Um, the one thing that I never got, and I get it now, but when I was a kid, and this is one of the things that was confusing to me when I was growing up. Remember when they arrive at the New Orleans hotel airport, and then they are apprehended again, and then Bond is about to be put on an airplane, and the idea is that he's going to be thrown out of the airplane and fall to his death. And Jane Seymour's Solitaire has all the while been in the taxi, and then she gets out, and then while everyone is saying, "Oh, you're gonna die, Bonnie," and then she says, right, and then she says, "My only regret is I won't be there to see it," and she begins to try to hit Bond with her purse or something, and then this causes a distraction for Bond to get away and go to that brilliant Mrs. Bell sequence, okay, which is a great sequence, although it is very illogical. All the time they've been chasing Mrs. Bell, or they've been chasing Bond and Mrs. Bell around the airplane and stuff, and then they're shooting him and they're shooting at him, but at the end the wings break off the plane, and then they go, and then she has her holy moment, right, which is a great moment, and then but it ends with the escape, right? The all the bad guys should still be there. So I don't understand where the bad guys went. All what happens at the end is Bond returns the plane to Mr. Bleecker and the flying school, but there's no sign of the bad guys anywhere. So I don't know how actually he was able to evade the bad guys that were chasing him and Mrs. Bell around. But oh well, maybe it was the power of Mrs. Bell, and all the power. Maybe it was something. Maybe there was another supernatural. Maybe Mrs. Bell also is a clairvoyant, and we don't know it. But anyway, um, that's a great sequence in and of itself. But what was I saying? So yes. So the moment when Solitaire uh, tries to hit Bond, I never understood that moment until much later when I grew up, and I realized, yes, okay, this is what Solitaire needed to do in order to protect herself, which was she needed to show that she was being kidnapped. And in order to uh, give support for that story, she needed to show that she hated Bond at this moment. So okay, so I get that. And so in order to protect herself, that's what she needed to do in order to get back into the good graces of Kananga and company. So, but for the longest time, I was like, why is she suddenly turning on Bond? I never understood. But anyway, Solitaire, another great character in another great film, and another great character in a film filled with great characters. But anyway, I've talked long enough, and my mic is off, and so now I will go to the chat and see what everyone else has to say. Zyrother says, I did like seeing a gadget fail. You're referring to I think the watch, and it not being able to retrieve the boat. in that sequence with the farm. So I think that was a great moment too. It means that Bond has to act on his own, which is a great moment. You're absolutely right. And I don't think there was any music during the alligator escape. Yes, there wasn't, except at the very end when he manages to escape and he's like, da 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 da. And it's great. And Kevin says, speaking of villains, I love how Whisper tries to warn Kananga of Bond escaping above the water. He doesn't manage to because, of course, he whispers and can't speak loudly enough. Yes, yes, that's a great moment. It's one of those things where it's like the villain's like strength or special trait becomes his or her undoing. And we actually saw that with Teehee as well. That becomes his undoing. So that's a wonderful thing. Yes, Damn Fool says Hamilton, meaning Guy Hamilton, adored doing the thing with the Rolex, rendering it useless. Yes, and and Rod says, I love Clifton James, the sheriff in Live and Let Die. Yes, so this is referring to Sheriff Pepper. You know, I did make reference to Pepper in the context of his treatment of Adam, but I like how that there's a kind of buffoonish, lovable quality that he turns into. I actually like Pepper a lot more in The Man with the Golden Gun and his shorts and his pulled up socks. And I like that. Although he does exhibit a lot of racist attitudes in that film as well, but he does get his comeuppance, I suppose, in this film. But it's befitting his character, and I think it's there's a kind of a terrible non-PC kind of buffoonish, lovable quality about him. I don't know if that's a good way of describing it, but you know, there's nothing wrong with liking what Sheriff Pepper shows and displays and what he represents in terms of his character on screen. I think it's for better or for worse, it is one of the integral parts of the Roger Moore era. So. Clifton James had a bit of, that was so interesting too. And I didn't realize this, but Clifton James in the documentary of Live and Let Die said that he wore padding for his role as Pepper, which is fascinating. Which is, wow, which is really great. That's great. Let's see. Yeah, Cooper Glover, 1972, is talking about the end with Kananga and the explosion and how it's kind of fake. Yeah. I think but I think as I say, it's the most ludicrous part of the film. But that's the end. If you're not right, if you're not with the film by that point, it's like, I don't know. But yeah, that's yeah. And MBP, thank you. MBP says, if the Kananga explosion effect, had been realistic, the movie would have gotten an R rating. Yes, that's what I was trying to refer to earlier. So well done, MBP. Thank you very much. Zyrother says $7 million budget. So there's talk about the budget earlier. So thank you very much for that. Yeah. Like... Damn Fool, Spencer does make reference to the After Effect applied zoom, which isn't right. My eye says to me that that's not an in-camera zoom. So anyway, let's see. All right, I'm sorry, I'm skipping over a lot here. Yeah, Stealthborn says a hook claw thing. Thank you. Yes. So, is it a hook? Is it a claw? It's a hook claw. Okay. Maybe I know there must be a technical term for that, but oh gosh. Anyway, I should have looked at. I should have looked at one. Let's see. Yes, I'm at the point where we're talking about. Yeah, I'm sorry. I've just pushed my finger slipped, and yeah, I went back to the bottom of the thing, so I'm sorry about this. Okay. I'm not a master of the live chat. Aaron Pin, our dear friend Aaron Pin, he masters the live chat brilliantly, so I'm not able to do so. But anyway, let's see. I can't do it very well. Oh, Jay Biddy is here. Hello, it's nice to see you. Um, Ryan Hardy, I'm seeing here. Um, let's see. There's talk about Enter the Dragon and Bruce Lee. That's great. Um, Sexy Monkey is here. Hello, it's nice to see you. Iacona23 is here. Hello. You say Roger Moore is great. I enjoy him in his non-Bond roles in movies and TV shows. The Saint and the Persuaders. Okay. Let's see. Razor Wire Reviews is here. Hello, my friend. As a kid, Roger was my favorite Bond. Fond memories, even if in many ways he's one of the weaker Bonds. Yeah, I I think he's very strong. Very very strong. And I maybe I mentioned in jest about the Roger Moore run. I like the Roger. Like I also like too how the um, is it here? I'm sorry, I haven't played it, but it's in the what do you call it? The gun barrel sequence. The gun barrel sequence for Roger in here, Live and Let Die, and The Man with Golden. It's the same sequence. So this is where he turns and he has the thing where he supports his gun arm with his other arm, right? So I like that. That's really quick. But then the gun barrel sequence from Spy onwards, it's that thing where he does like he's walking and just like a little. He does a. It's noticeably a slower turn than the turns of Sean Connery with the little wiggle, the jiggle at the end there, or the even Lazenby when he's got the knee. Dun da 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 da. He's very quick too. Pierce is so fast. Boom. But I think the award for fast goes to Daniel Craig, and especially Quantum of Solace, Gun Barrel Daniel. I mean, that's just like boom, 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 But Rogers, it's at least Live and Let Die. It's rather quick, but from Spy on, it's I think the slowest of the bunch. Um, but that's okay. That's okay. I mean, I suppose he needs to aim, and in order to be able to aim, he needs that extra second or so. I'm not sure, but anyway. Uh, uh, I'm sorry. Timothy Dalton's is great, but he has this. It's interesting where I think the center of gravity or the weight is centered on the middle part of his body. So it's like I always think of like whenever I think of Timothy Dalton's gun barrel, I always envision like a spinning top. It looks like a spinning top when he's walking. He's walking and he turns. It's like a spinning top shape. But Roger has this really nice. It's like when he's maybe less so here, but more so in the Spy Who Loved Me on. It's like hold my drink type of gun barrel. I think that's great. I think it's really great. But anyway, let's see here. I'm just going on here because I'm gonna have to keep on. Just scrolling down again. I'm so sorry if I've skipped you. Jeremy B is here. Hello, greetings. Um, let's see. Raymond is here. Hello, Raymond. You're talking about Jeffrey Holder in one of your comments. Great. Do you own a doghouse? You're so Tim. So hello. Thank you very much. Take care, my friend. Take care. Let's see. Um, Filippo. Hello. It's nice to see you. Sina Arts is here. Dustin is here. Hello. Oh, wow. It's great to see you all. I'm so sorry I didn't say hi earlier. I'm so sorry. Let's see. Oh, gosh. This is what a great conversation. Shandon, hello. It's nice to see you. I know you're busy, so thank you very much. I hope you're well, my friend. And let's see. Also, gosh. Um, there's great music here. I'm at the point where you're talking about Guns N' Roses and Live and Let Die and Queen. Okay, great. Um, Oh, wonderful. Let's see. Um, I'm at the point where Erwin's talking about references made to Rosie as a double agent, maybe. We saw double agents in past Bond films as well, which you rightly point out, Erwin, which is great. Damn Fool and Kubrick, 72. You guys are great. Thank you so much for steering the conversation as you do. Well done, the two of you. Thank you. Um, let's see. Great. Yeah, Cooper Glover, at the point where we're saying the Bond villain likes to tell his evil plans to Bond and give him a glass of champagne before taking Bond to his divan. Yeah, that's great, and I have to mention it too. I love the scene between the Kananga big Mr. Big reveal. That is an interesting scene, very interesting scene. It's actually kind of creepy when he's like, right, and he pulls off his nose like, and and he pull, and some people say that maybe the makeup isn't the best in the world, but actually I think it's really effective because it has that really it has that sense of it's kind of off, and you need that in a film like this. Things need to be a little bit off. And so I love the Mr. Big reveal, and I love the Rapid Kota performance, like, oh my dear Mr. Bond, you'll positively drive them out of their minds. It's out of the business. That's so great. And then he suddenly has flashes of anger. No, that and all that's such brilliant stuff. And although I, and please, did Solitaire get the number of the watch right or wrong? Which is it? Because they say that she got it right, but then Kananga says after, when he's alone with her, he says, "You weren't even close." So, but is that a lie to her in order to see how she would react? Because maybe she got the number right all the time, and he just needs final validation of what he thinks about her betrayal towards him. And so if he lies to her at that moment and says, "You weren't even close," meaning you got the number wrong, if she really didn't sleep with Bond, then she could say, "No, you are wrong. I got the number correct. I am confident in my skills and my gift as the high priest," or something. Maybe that was his final trick, his attempt to trap her, and then she fell into the trap, and that maybe that was so. Maybe she got the number right, but then that's why he didn't get his fingers snapped off. Because if he got the number wrong, you'd think that the villains would love to see Bond in pain and something like that. So, but okay, that's another thing. Again, if you know the answer to that, please let me know. But I think my theory is she actually got the numbers right, but Kananga needed to lie to her again one more time just to be sure that she indeed betrayed him. Okay. Or she just got the numbers completely wrong. In which case, why didn't they snap off the fingers of Bond? But okay, anyway. But that's such a great scene as well. And it's like, I love it's like, he's cleaning off the makeup, and he's like, man, when black, white, I don't, it doesn't discriminate, just that thing. Oh, great. Just a wonderful, evil to his character. Yaphet Kotto, one of the best parts of this film. By far, by far. And the way he composes himself, his posture, and just his presence. What a great villain. What a great villain indeed. Okay. And okay, so now we're going to let's see. Um, and also, I have to say, the dance. Oh gosh, the way that they're dancing in the jazz funeral. Oh, that's I just want to like. I'm a very poor dancer, but gosh, and the woman. The scene that always gets to me is when we get a shot of the woman who's so crying, and she's obviously meant to be, the woman, maybe her husband or her father or someone she loved. She is the one who is in the most state of bereavement at this moment, right? And she's crying, and then we say, right? And so I love that moment. And I also love too the soundtrack version of that, because the first part, da da da. There's actually two moments of da da da, and then da da da, and then it goes into the da 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 da. It's great. That's great. That is a great way to go. Really a great way to go. But and also the singer in the New Orleans Philly of Soul, and she's singing "Live and Let Die," and her dance moves are just really she live and let die. Oh, that's so great. And she can crouch down, and there's a like almost like a so great. Anyway, and just fantastic. Gosh. Um, yeah, BJ Arno. Yes, thank you. So, so great. Ah, wonderful. Anyway, what was I saying? So, let's see. Um, Erwin says it's going to be a beautiful day. Yes, they're heading for the hills. Oh, great, great. But and also, what was the trap that they were going to be setting up for Bond? Right, there was some kind of trap. The trap wasn't the gun that shot out of the mouth of the scarecrow or anything like that. There was a different trap entirely. The trap was set, right? But oh well. Uh, let's see. Yes, and Coral Jr. Yeah, thank you. Erwin says Coral Jr. Um, Sweet mother of pearl. Yes, yes, yeah. Uh, yes, and letting us know about the safety catch too on the gun. It's great. Coral Jr. That's another thing too. I didn't mention. I didn't have time, unfortunately. But the ties between this film and Doctor No, the way it opens up, the fact that Bond isn't introduced in the kind of opening teaser, so to speak. The idea of the Jamaica locale or the Jamaica like locale in San Monique and the like. So and props also to that guy who's the translator at the UN. I mean, he's really into his job too. You can really tell. So let's see. Um, Stealthborn says Yaphet Kotto tapped into a variety of emotions and styles with his performance. Yeah, and the damn fool says, yeah, hates the shark. Yeah, that shark moment. Yeah, yeah. That is a great moment too. Really fantastic. And let's see. Zyrothus says, not as good as the Big Trouble in Little China explosion. Yeah. Um, let's see. Um, there's talking about Damn Fool is talking about Solitaire, and there's a conversation yourself, Selfborn is talking about, and Ryan Harding and Wolfgratz, Jane Seymour and Solitaire. Well done. Yes, yes. Raymond too. I agree. I really agree. One of the best. Um, really a great one. Um, Oh, talking about the numbers, Cooper Glover 1972 says, "I think Solitaire got the numbers wrong because she shot." Yes, yes, because she slept with Bond, right? So it could be. Yeah, yeah, and Damn Fool says the illusion of the jazz funeral is so complete that you can't help but marvel at the genius of Mankiewicz. Yes, and then you talking about the cover version, yes. And then yeah, the table goes down at that precise moment, and then after he got this thing, and what is it, man? You know, and so he does a different like it's like a different kind of dance. It's like I've done my job, and now I'm gonna just have fun for the rest of the day. You know, so that's really great. It's kind of like the two sides of the coin. It's the same thing with the jazz funeral. Like one side, they're really somber, and then when the job is done, boom, it's time to celebrate. You know, beers all around. And the same thing, I think, with the song. You know, oh, Shay, live and let die. And then, that's great. That's so great. Gosh, wonderful. All right, so Stealthborn says I have to go see. So take care, my friend. I hope you're well. We'll talk again soon. Dave Janes is here. Hello. And Jeremy's here. Hello, North Carolina. It's nice to see you. Nice. I hope you're doing well. And oh gosh, I know there may be other people here that I haven't. Maybe I didn't call it. I'm so sorry. But anyway, that is the situation here. So now it's 9 a.m. where I am. So I've been speaking for about 3 hours. So I'm sorry. Gosh, I got carried away at a lot of places. So I'm very sorry about that. I want to thank all of you for the chat. I've looked through it. It's great. Thank you so much for all of your. Um, um, all right. Wonderful. Just being disarming, Donald. Ryan says that's great. So, thank you so much for this. So, in conclusion, I think this is and what is razor wire? It looks. Is it really a Daisuke Bond stream if it isn't at least 1.5 times as long as the film he's discussing? I think not. Yeah, I think, but that's the one thing about films, right? It's like they have this. It's like we can go on and on and on about this, like. Um, oh gosh, I didn't even talk about like that poor guy who's on the cliff, and then Bond just kicks when he's on the hang glide, just kicks him, and he's I hope he's okay. That poor guy. Maybe he survived the fall. I don't know. Maybe I hope so. But or like when Bond throws a cigar and he calls out, right. I wonder if the cigar hit anyone. But anyway, I'm sorry. But anyway, that's thinking too much. But anyway, Dave says came in late. Oh, Sexy Monkey here says, so I said earlier, Daisuke, that Roger Moore used to be my neighbor in the 90s and 2000s. Don't know if you saw my... Yes, I remember that. Yes, so that was very interesting. Very, very interesting. And let's see. And then Luke says, I may actually attempt a mass rewatch of the series now that No Time to Die has been pushed back. Yes, yes, I heard about that. So we'll have to wait and see about that. But there's right the Bond films that we have up to now. Oh gosh, go for it, absolutely go for it. And Cooper Glover says, I think you have an encyclopedic knowledge of James Bond. No, 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 no. Thank you. You're so kind, Cooper Glover 72. But no, no, no. My knowledge pales in comparison to many others. You have so much knowledge, more than me. So thank you, and thank also Spencer, damn fool, idealist crusader. Just right. Just you guys, everyone here, just fantastic. And Erwin asks, "Cheers, Daisuke. You already know which Bond film you will discuss next?" No, and in fact, Erwin, are you still here, Erwin? I'd like to ask. Um, I'd like to ask, do you have a preference? Or maybe I don't know. I'd like to ask you in the chat right now, everyone who's here. What film do you want to talk about next? Let's figure it out, and we'll decide. We'll figure out a way to decide. But just right now, what James Bond film do you want to talk about next? Say it in the chat, and then we'll figure it out, and we'll decide before we end. And I have to go very soon, but we'll make a decision before we end. Okay, so what film do you want to talk about for the next live stream? Let me know. Cooper Clever says Man with Golden Gun or Spy Who Loved Me. So Mugug or Swumlum. Okay, so Mugug or Swum. So Spy Who Loved Me or Man with a Golden Gun. Oh, and Sexy Monkey continues. Ken Adam was also a friend and childhood friend of your mother. Wow. Wow. That is so cool. Ken Adam, of course, is a legend. Ken Adam is a legend. I love in my favorite one of my favorite things about Ken Adam is in the interviews and documentaries, he always says, tongue in the cheek. I love how he says tongue in the cheek. Ah, that's right. Anyway, that's so cool, Sexy Monkey. Really. Okay, so Carl says you only live twice. Okay. You only live twice. So a damn fool says, I did live streams on Casino Royale 667 and Never Say Never Again. Oh, great. Those are always interesting discussions. So yes, yes. Um, oh my goodness, that would be very interesting. We have spoken about the Spencer too. So, okay, so that's an idea. So Wolfgratz, from Russia with Love or Frol. Okay, let's see. Raymond says, I think Kananga lied to her talking about the number of the Rolex watch. I have a suspicion that, yeah, I think the same way too, Raymond. Let's see. Zyro says, I had to pick a specific film, the Never Say Never Again. Interesting. Um, Interesting. Let's see. Razor Wire. Luke says, do you have a playlist for the Bond streams? I think I do. Maybe I don't. If I don't, I'll try to fix it. I haven't updated it lately, so thanks for the reminder. Cooper Glover says, in any way, I wouldn't mind discussing any of them. Let's see. And we're split amongst untold choices. Let's see here. Sexy Monk says, Man with a Golden Gun. Interesting. I really love Man with the Golden Gun, and that's another one that, when I was younger, it's like Man with the Golden Gun. But now I think it's really great. There are a lot of things to talk about with the Man with the Golden Gun, by the way. But let's see. Erwin says, I wouldn't mind a totally random pick, right? Title out of a hat. Let's see. Reinhardt, from Beijing with Love. Yes. Erwin says, but the Craig films are so related to each other, out of orders maybe is a bit weird. Yes, I kind of agree with that. So we did start with Casino Royale, so I think I might go in order like that, right? After all, right? I don't want to get too spoilerish, but we have to talk about it, right? The author of All Your Pain, you know that. So let's see. Community vote. Yeah, I don't know. Can we do a? I don't know how we can do a vote here. I don't. I was thinking about a poll, but I do want to just like people who I do want to give it give people who are actually here some say. I know people have said it. Maybe they've left early, so maybe that's not fair to people who are attended but then didn't stay around for the very end here. So I should have thought about it in a more democratic way, I suppose. But um, I can let you know just very randomly. You know, I can do anything. I can do anything. I actually maybe I agree with Irwin's philosophy that maybe if we talk about Craig film, the next film we should talk about is Quantum of Solace because that's in the order, and I think there's a certain order of that. There are some continuities in this film in the films that I think going in order serves a good function. But of course, we can go out of order. Oh, incidentally, speaking of continuity, I forgot. I'm so sorry. Just a more moment in Live and Let Die, which is very important. Reference to Mrs. Bond, and the reaction of Roger Moore, and when he hears the phrase Mrs. Bond, there's a moment of something of a look of recognition on his face, which I think is very telling. That's a very and talk about continuity. So, anyway, let's see. So Zyra says, I meant to vote in the community page on your YouTube page. Yeah, I think so. But uh, I don't know. I think there's I like the idea of a kind of, well, let's say randomness to it. I do want to figure it out now so that I can just start to think about it and let it simmer. Because if it's a vote, then that leaves a little bit too much time needed on my part. So let's figure it out now. Again, I apologize for the undemocratic nature of this, but okay. So I've heard "Man with the Golden Gun," "Spy Who Loved Me." I'm looking at the shelf here. Let's see. What have we talked about before? So we've talked about all the debut Bonds in the Eon films. So Doctor No, Live and Let Die. I'm sorry, On Her Majesty's Secret Service, Live and Let Die. Living Daylights, and Casino Royale. So now we can go basically anywhere in the current film sequence. Gosh, I can talk about anything. I mean, I don't. We don't have to do a non Roger Moore Bond. We can do any Bond. It can be any Bond at all. Um, I do. Mm, can I be perfectly honest? My If I could vote, my heart kind of goes towards one of these films at the moment, which is You Only Live Twice, or Moonraker, or A View to a Kill, or Tomorrow Never Dies. That's where I don't know. I seem to be in that mindset at the moment. Mine could change maybe an hour from now, but right, You Only Live Twice, Moonraker, A View to a Kill, and Tomorrow Never Dies. That's where I'm my headspace is at right now. So, but and maybe I could go with The Man with the Golden Gun, but it might be interesting to go with something that is out of sequence. So, what do you think about that? And it could be anything else, anything you want. Um, you know, of course, the passing of the great right, Lonsdale, so Drax, and so I think that has been one of the reasons why Moonraker has also been in my mind as well. But You Only Live Twice, it might be interesting. You Only Live Twice. I'm getting some You Only Live Twice or yolts. I'm getting a lot of yolts, so it can get let's see. It would be interesting to get your views on. Yeah, maybe I have been asked about You Only Live Twice, and I think it's maybe good to get it clear about what I feel about it. Because as I say, there are a lot of things that are actually really ludicrous. And I spoke about how this film has a ludicrous moment with Kanang, and so, but actually, You Only Live Twice has a lot of ludicrous moments to it. And so, you want to do You Only Live Twice? Let's do it. You want to do that? Okay, let's do it. Dave says You Only Live Twice is actually my favorite Bond film. Excellent. Now, I mentioned before, I think it's great. It has a certain way it depicts Japanese people, but I'll talk about that, and I've spoken a little bit about that today. But I think it's great. You know, here's a little hint. Okay, we'll do a little bit of a You Only Live Twice. Just, you have 2 minutes. You have to. Okay, my favorite bit in You Only Live Twice, or one of my favorite bits is, okay, we talked about in Live and Let Die about how they leave him. They take all this trouble to leave Bond in the little island there on the farm, and then they go inside and they don't even bother to stick around to see if he actually gets killed or not. Oh my goodness, what a great, terribly planned Bond villain moment. But brilliant. Okay. The same thing happens in You Only Live Twice. One of my favorite things, which is, okay, um, okay, anyone who hasn't seen You Only Live Twice, you should. Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to talk about a thing that happens at the end of You Only Live Twice. So if you don't want to hear about it, thank you. And I turn off this live stream right now. So turn it off in about 5 seconds, because after 5, I'm going to talk about You Only Live Twice. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. You Only Live Twice. Okay, so this is a little hint. So my favorite moment, or one of my favorite moments, is at the end when, right, Bond is still in the clutches of Blofeld and Spectre, even as the ninjas, okay, the ninjas come in and to make their attack on the volcano, which is not really a I guess it is a volcano, right? Because there is an eruption, but it's a hollowed out Is it a volcano or isn't it? It is a volcano, and it's still active, I think. Because you do see the eruption at the end. Although that does that really make sense? But anyway, the so Bond is still, right. He's impregnable, and then Blofeld has this wonderfully terrible Japanese, which is "koko ni iro," which is really a terrible. That's a terrible Japanese thing. So he's a really bad Japanese speaker, but bad Japanese is better than not no Japanese at all. And if you're in Japan and if you're working in this real big structure like Blofeld is, it's probably best to have at least some working knowledge of the Japanese language. So he says "koko ni iro," which is "stay here." That's what he's meant to say. But you wouldn't say that if you wanted to say "stay here." You'd say something else. "taishitsu suru na" or "man your stations" or something like. But anyway, so he takes Bond and Osato, and he goes down to the lair with right, and then he takes the gun. Blofeld does, and he's still in his lair part of the complex, and he says the thing, and he points the gun at Bond, and he says, "This is the price of failure, Mr. Bond," right, or something. "This is the price of failure," and he points the gun at Bond, and suddenly Blofeld turns the gun on Osato and boom, shoots him. And Osato falls dead. And then he takes the same gun. He said, "Come on, come outside, Bond." So, okay, at this moment, you know that Blofeld wants Bond dead. Okay, he wants Bond dead, but what does he do? He has the gun on Bond in a place of the complex where he's still relatively safe. No ninjas have come in and attacked that part of the complex yet. He goes then, after he shoots Osato, he takes Bond, who is still alive. He wants him dead, but he has this guy who he's still alive. He takes him outside into the main part of the complex, where all this fighting and explosions and happening, and people are shooting. Machine guns, I think, are there. A lot of dangerous stuff. So he's got to go there because of his egg-shaped monorail, right? So he goes there and he sits down in his egg-shaped monorail. And then what does he do? It's at this moment where he says, "Goodbye, Mr. Mine." He's about to kill him, of course. Tiger comes in and saves the day at the very precise moment, right? With the throwing star to the wrist, okay, which is great. But this is another great thing. Blofeld wanted to kill Bond so much that he had the gun trained on Bond. He was about to shoot him, but no, he decided to shoot Osato instead. Okay. And he wanted to kill Bond so much that he decides to, instead of killing Bond when he had the chance with the gun on him, and he could have shot him in the comfort of his own immaculate 5-star lair. Oh no, he decides to take Bond, who is still alive, outside into this place where all this explosion is happening, all the gunfire, and then he decides to shoot him there. And not only that, he decides to shoot him, but before that, he will say, "Goodbye, Mr. Bond," in the slowest possible way ever. "Goodbye, Mr. Bond." Boom. No, it's "Goodbye, Mr. Bond. That's great. That is so great. And then Tanaka, boom, it's great. And of course there's this whole thing. Um, you know, and Tiger, we did it. But then, of course, that's not the end, right? Because we know at the end, da 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 da. Those the keys of Blofeld. Remember, I think that the pen is mightier than the sword. Well, in the hands of Blofeld, the key is mightier than the gun. Okay, so that's the thing. So that's one of my favorite moments of that film. And also, you know, for the longest time, and even now, I could never for the life of me figure out exactly what um, 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 the Karen Dor character, uh, um, what's her name? Helga, is that her name? Yes. What she says at the end before she gets eaten by the piranhas or something, and she says, you know, Osato, ah! You know, is she saying something or is she just screaming out? I always thought she said Osato, aim. I thought she said the word aim, which means maybe she's saying aim at Blofeld and kill. But why would she say aim? So when I was a kid, why is she screaming aim? Does that have a different meaning than what I think it means? So for the longest time, I was saying, what does aim mean? Aim, but I think it's just a scream. But oh well, oh well. Maybe you know, it's I should just try to figure that out again, and see what that leads to me. Yes, yes. So anyway, sorry about that. Okay, so um, let's see. Uh, so yeah, okay. Um, yes, Razor Wire says, "Do you have 2 minutes?" And then Zyros says, "5 hours later." Sorry about that. Okay, sorry. Sorry about that. Okay, so all right, and so let's see. So yeah, Raymond asks for "Spy Who Loved Me," and we'll do that again. But I'm sorry. Let's do "You Only Live Twice" next, and then we'll see if we can do "Spy Who Loved Me" at a future date. But it's my plan, hopefully, to go through all of them. And so yeah, so let's do the spy. Not to, let's do "You Only Live Twice," and yeah, we'll go from there. So. Um, yeah, Ryan says You Only Live Twice has some great Japanese actors. There's Tetsuro Tamba, right? Wakabayashi Akiko, yes, yes. Um, yes, there's some talk about Hama Mie or Mie Hama and what she brought, but right, right. This is business and all that stuff. So, and yeah, but actually, in fact, in particular, Akiko Wakabayashi is really great because she. My understanding is that that's her own voice that she's providing when she's speaking, both in Japanese. You know, when she says, you know, what does she say in Japanese? You know, when they meet Henderson, and she says, "Oh, 変田さんはいらっしゃいます?" She says that in Japanese, and so that means is Mr. Henderson here? And so that's I think her own voice. And when she's speaking in English, which is the majority of her time on screen in that role, I think it's her own voice, and I think she does a really excellent job. And also the uh, uh, the I think she had a hand in changing the name of the character because the character, the name that she ends up having, the character, which is Aki, which is that's a very common first name for a female first name in Japan. So that's a really good choice of that. No one is named. You know, I don't know. I've never met anyone like named what is it, Kissy or something. I've never met anyone named Kissy. So maybe I'm sure there are people here named Kissy. I just haven't met them, but you know, but okay, but let's see. So okay, we'll do You Only Live Twice, and I hope that is okay for everyone. Um, and Zyroth is see with the subtitles. So yes, 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 yes. About the yeah. Zyroth are always with the sensible approach to things, I think. Yes, if I remember, I'll turn on the subtitles. Yes, please too. Yes, please do so. But no pressure. Again, it's I don't think right. But um, and I love I love the that's another thing too. the whole thing with Mr. Fisher and Osato. They really do business really quickly about the monosodium glutamate and a license to manufacture. And okay, we'll just do it. Okay, fine. Great, we'll set up the details and you're done. I love that. That's right. Wow, the swiftness of business in the age of Bond is amazing. I mean, those sorts of things would require lots of business meetings and pre contract approval and things like that. But no, I'll just have all the contracts drafted immediately, and then I will kill him. That's great. That's really great. Yeah. And the music too is really wonderful. I know people like to pronounce it in the documentary as the Kobe docs, but actually it's Kobe, the Kobe docs, Kobe. And I actually have to insist upon that because I was born in Kobe, not in the dock area that's depicted in the film, but in the general part of that country in the general part of the country of Japan. I was born in Kobe. So for anyone who wants a quick Japanese lesson, if you talk about the Kobe dock sequence in You Only Live Twice, always refer to it not as Kobe, but Kobe. Kobe. So be is like my last name is Beppu, so it's the same be sound, be. Kobe. So that's the name of the city or the place Kobe where they go, and you know. But of course, I would tell Bon that too. But of course, he took a first at Oriental languages at Cambridge. So who am I to tell Bond how to pronounce Kobe? Kobe, so he knows it better than I do, I'm sure. But yes, Cooper Glover 1972 says, love the Nancy Sinatra song. Me too, my friend, me too. I I go back and forth kind of with the whole, the whole little I forget what it's called. There's a little bit at the beginning where it's kind of like the dun 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 dun. That I don't know. That seems a little bit uncomfortable for me in terms of the kind of that kind of tune that's used to depict Asianness. But that's a tune that I think even like Japanese game designers and people use to depict things. So it's a tune that's not that I don't want to say it's completely exclusive to use by Western songwriters, but that's one thing that I always find. I don't think it irritates me. It's kind of like okay, I'm just okay. I understand why that's there, but the rest of the song is just mellifluous and beautiful, and I love the it's really great because that's one of the things that I miss about James Bond songs now. I don't know what the phrase is in terms of musicology, but songs in a major key and songs in a minor key. You notice how all the songs now are like songs in a minor key. They're like dark and like brooding. Okay, Skyfall, Spectre. What was the Spectre one? What was it? What was the name of that one? Um, what's the name of the Spectre song? I forget the Spectre song name. It's not Spectre. What is the name of the song? It's not. What's the name of the Spectre song? Um, Writings on the Wall. Thank you very much. Yes, the writings on the wall. La 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 la. Yeah. So okay. But it's kind of dark, right? You Only Live Twice is bright. It's a major key. It has a beautiful like bridge to it, and I like that. And I miss songs like that. For Your Eyes Only had a same major key. All Time High from Octopussy had the same thing. I know it's not the end. It's not the theme song or the title song, but If There Was a Man, from the Living Daylights, which is a beautiful song. That was also had the major key as well. So I missed having those. I think from GoldenEye onwards, they've been kind of minor key songs, and so I wish they had a nice slow song that was kind of up, that was happy for the songs, and they weren't always brooding all the time. Not to say that brooding songs don't have their place, they do, but there's just really something very refreshing about hearing this song. And like Louis Armstrong as well. We have all the time in the world. My goodness, it would be so great if the Daniel Craig series had a Louis Armstrong type of song. And it's just, I think it would just make people happy. I would be so happy just listening to that song and be like, oh, this makes me happy. Instead, I have to, I mean, I can talk about the songs about the others. I'm actually not, I kind of go back and forth on the songs for the new films, but I actually like Another Way to Die. And maybe like one of the few people on the planet who likes Another Way to Die for the Quantum of Solace, because I think it's just so out there. It's really weird, and I like the weirdness of it. I actually think that the rest of the songs kind of get a bit too. Um, they're kind of heavy, and I kind of like a lightness to the song, like a View to a Kill type of poppiness, or aha, I like that sort of thing. So but I think You Only Live Twice stands out in that regard very much so. um, let's see. Razor Wire Review says No Time to Die might be one of my favorites in terms of the song. I haven't heard the song yet. I actually make it a point to not hear the song in ahead of time, I think. Actually, no, wait, no. I have heard, maybe I've heard a little bit, but I just forgot it. I don't know. Did I hear it? Maybe I did, but even if I did, I forgot about it. Yeah, I don't even know what the song is, so I don't know what it is. But anyway, um, you know how it is with social media. Like that. I don't know. There's Social media is so saturated with information. It's like maybe I've heard it. And I haven't. I don't even realize I've heard it. I don't know. But anyway, um, let's see. Yeah. Um, yes. Sexy, yes, yes. No Time to Die. Irwin, so maybe I should, Irwin and Razor Wire making me want to listen to the song ahead of time. So maybe I will listen to it now. And yeah, maybe I'll do it. Um, yeah, yeah, um, yeah. Okay, Razor Wire says the live version of No Time to Die with Hans Zimmer is conducting is incredible. I haven't heard that at all, so I'll have to take a listen to that. So, yeah, you've whetted my appetite. Uh, yeah, yeah, you've whetted my appetite for information, as Bond would say to Corin in Moonraker. Okay, the bass line. All right. Okay, so You Only Live Twice. Wonderful. We'll have to do that. Diane Fool, Idealist Crusader said, I like Die Another Day. We all have our passions. Yeah, yeah. Um, um, right. Another day. Yeah, I love the, yeah, that's really clear. Die another day. Oh, Sigmund Freud. Yeah, I think that's great. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah. Analyze this. Yeah. So, and yeah, in the old stream, I fully expect an hour dedicated to Little Nelly. Only an hour? Okay, so, all right, so I'm gonna, any last minute, anything you want to say before we close it out here? I'll be here. Anything else? No? No? I'm like the guy at what is it, Sotheby's at the auction with there's no Fabergé egg, but I'm saying, going once, going twice. Okay, okay, there's some, okay, the last one. And an hour, damn full of data to create an hour about proper sake temperatures, sake, or as Sean Connery likes to pronounce it, sake. Oh no, I like sake. Yes. uh, yeah. And Sexy Monkey says, the Madonna entry. Sorry, but I don't like that. Seems very out of place to me anyway. Um, it is, but also actually it fits in very interesting because actually, well, okay. Oh guys, I can't stop. The Die Another Day opening sequence and title sequence is in fact one of the most interesting aspects of that film because it in fact serves the function of James Bond and the passing of time, which is, I think, very Fleming-esque. It's a very Fleming-esque thing. As for those of you who know the novel Spencer, I'm sure, and I know we've talked about this before. That to me is like the Man with the Golden Gun novel. The Die Another Day opening sequence, and in fact, actually, the title sequence more than the opening sequence. That's I think the crystallization in film form of the Man with the Golden Gun, the opening, and so and in fact after and the openings, the title sequence, and actually the first whatever it is, 10, 15 minutes of the film, the rehabilitation. But anyway. Yeah, yeah. Uh, um, Ryan says, "Oh, Collector 85. Hello, Collector 85. Yes, it's nice to see you here again. So thank you very much." And Ryan says, uh, Wolf shakes his head. Sadly, another one. He said Sotheby's. Ryan says, I can't decide whether I disliked Madonna's theme song more or her appearance in the film. Oh gosh, yeah, we'll talk about Die Another Day and yeah, and all that entails. But yeah, very soon. Um, and yeah, all right, all right. Gosh, what a great way to end. I can't. It's like it's like when am I gonna end? When am I gonna end? You know, it's like it's like a Tom Mankiewicz penned James Bond film. You know, all the action in Live and Let Die, the boat chase, you know, the finale and Kananga and the boo boo and all that and whisper and then they get on the train. So that's the end. That's the end of the live stream. But oh no, we have a final fight between Teehee and Bond to end it. So maybe I'm applying the Tom Mankiewicz approach maybe this is the Tom Mankiewicz way of doing a live stream. So this little bit is this the fight between Teehee and Bond. Okay. So anyway, all right, my friends. The next stream I don't know when it will be. I will announce the time. I will announce the I will announce the timing when I can. I haven't decided. It depends on my schedule, but when I decide, I will let you know. Very much so. So you only live twice, my friends. Looking forward to it. So anyway, thank you very much, and I will go now. And so let's end. What should we end with in terms of a live and let die way of ending? We could do. I don't like to swear, but I could do a kind of holy moment, or we could do no, let's end it. Let's end it the way that the film ends. So let's do a little bit of a Baron Samedi laugh approach. So everyone together, if you want to join me at home, please do your best Baron Samedi laugh as we end the proceedings here. So once again, warmest regards to all of you. Please be well, stay safe, stay strong. As always, I will talk to you very soon. And cheers. Thank you so much. And let's start our Baron Samedi laughs right now. Ah ha 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 ha. Ah ha 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 ha. Ah ha ha.